Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the November 8th, 2018 regular assembly meeting. It is approximately 6 p.m. We're here in the Mona Lisa Drexler Assembly Chambers. If I could have everybody please stand for a non-sectarian invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. As we gather to take up important community business before us, including such things tonight as property use and public education funding, I ask each of us, according to our own traditions and beliefs, to take a few moments of quiet introspection to focus us on the task at hand. Thank you. We'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is in the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the record, I'd like to note that Assemblymember Major is participating telephonically tonight due to a family emergency, which is allowed pursuant to Fairbanks North Star Borough Code. Clerk, could you please call the roll? Call the roll.
I'd like to note for the record that Mr. Lajewski will be running a little late. Mr. Quist?
Here.
Mr. Tacky?
Here.
Miss Major?
Here.
Miss Sanford?
Here.
Mr. Gray?
Here.
Miss Williams?
Here.
Miss Like?
Here.
School Board Representative Miss Dominique?
Here.
And Mr. Cooper.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And before we get started, I'll just note the quick safety minute in case there's an emergency tonight. There are 3 easy exits from the assembly chambers, all marked with a red exit sign, the main double doors that you came in through, and then 2 doors on either side. So if there's any kind of emergency, take the exit that is the safest route out of here, and they'll take you outside. And to start off tonight, we have an Employee of the Month proclamation. Mayor Ward.
All right, if Wendy Dow would please come forward. Wendy's been recognized by her fellow employees, and a proclamation reads, Employee of the Month. Whereas each month, employees of the Fairbanks North Star Borough nominate a fellow employee to be recognized as Employee of the Month. And whereas Wendy Dow, Assistant Borough Attorney in the Legal Services Department, began her employment with the Fairbanks North Star Borough in July of 2014. And whereas in her position, Wendy has distinguished herself through her tenacity, perseverance, and diligence. She possesses an extraordinary drive to meet complex challenges head-on. And whereas Wendy exemplifies a motivated, conscientious, and energetic employee who exhibits a high level of competence and professionalism. And whereas Wendy is a flexible, creative, enthusiastic employee with a keen sense of responsibility, has an incredibly positive impact on her department. And whereas Wendy is an ardent team player who is always responsive and ready to get the job done, going well above the call of duty on a regular basis. And whereas Wendy's coworkers have expressed their great appreciation for her wonderful sense of humor and her bright smile. They count themselves very fortunate to have her as a member of their team. Now therefore, I, Bryce J. Ward, Mayor for the Fairbanks North Star Borough, by the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim Wendy Dow the Employee of the Month for November 2018. Recognition of her continuous outstanding performance as an employee of the Fairbanks North Star Borough and her dedicated service to the citizens of this community. Great job.
Speak.
Thanks. Congratulations, Wendy. Thanks for your service to the borough. That brings us to agenda item number 5, request for removal of items from the consent agenda and any other procedural motions. Are there any procedural motions, or does anyone need to declare a possible conflict of interest or remove anything from the consent agenda? Not seeing anything here in the room. Ms. Major, do you have any conflict or wish to remove anything from the consent agenda?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. So that brings us to item 6, citizens' comments. Each person's comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We'll have to recess citizens' comments at 6:50 p.m. to take up public hearing at 7. And there are 2 forms of citizen comments. The first is for items on the agenda that are not available for public hearing. This includes memorandums, bid awards, unfinished business, including ordinances that have been marked for reconsideration, resolutions, and anything on the consent agenda. And the second type of citizens' comments is items not on the agenda, so anything that's not on the agenda. I'll note for the record that Mr. Lejeski has joined us. And I'll start by opening citizens' comments A. Items on the agenda not set for public hearing. I have one person signed up, Andy DeGraw. And Mr. Turner, you can take the second seat, so. That's okay. But we'll have Mr. DeGraw first and then Mr. Turney right after you. And for those on the dais, Andy handed the clerks a sheet marked fund balance drawdown, and Mr. DeGraw, that's been distributed to all of the assembly members. So if you could state your name, spell your last, and your general neighborhood, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Andy DeGraw, DeGraw, and I reside in the Old Steese area, north of Fairbanks. I'd like to thank the Assembly and Mayor Ward for the opportunity to have addressed the Assembly at the joint meeting on Monday. It was an opportunity to, the past month or so has been an opportunity for me to familiarize myself with the history of the issues, the important issues at hand, as well as familiarize myself with the various numbers and different scenarios that apply. I've had several opportunities to meet and visit with Assembly members as well as the mayor, members of administration as well, and I appreciate those opportunities. I'm here tonight to request that the Assembly vote down Ordinance 2018-41. Several reasons. I'm going to paraphrase the various reasons and whittle down the list to 3 items. First item is I feel that it's important that as we have new administrations in place in both organizations as well as new governing bodies, I think it's important to allow the various bodies to engage in a dialogue. And I sense and I understand this completely. There's somewhat of maybe of a frustration of a kick the can down the road scenario. And I want to pledge to the Assembly this evening, as well as Mayor Ward, that I personally am ready to come to the table to find a solution and act accordingly. I do not want to kick the can down the road farther, and I want to take action. After a while, I get tired of talking. And so, but I feel that any change or compromise or middle ground that the two bodies can come to by way of mutually working together, I think would be superior to the same change through an ordinance. So I feel it's important that the bodies work together. I presented a 4-year spend-down plan on Monday. As Mr. Cooper mentioned, I've provided a line-by-line description of the change. The draft report that the Assembly received was originally put together in March of this year, and this was the first opportunity that I had to get my hands on that and update some numbers, as that plan, if allowed to play out, will be a living, breathing plan that would ebb and flow. But I stand behind that plan and feel that those numbers are very real ballpark numbers. And lastly, I think we can accomplish the intent of the ordinance in a much cleaner fashion by working together, kind of in reference to my first reason. There will be a trickle-down effect if a lapse is affected. There will be a trickle-down effect as far as state funding is concerned. So a sizable lapse in the ordinance would impact the deductible impact aid that the state would deduct from its foundation formula funding. So as it stands right now, I am working on ways that we can fund building maintenance in different ways, that we can, again, come together, find solutions. We can fund those activities that we feel are necessary. We feel that part of educating students is having adequate facilities for them. So I'm confident we can find more effective ways to meet the intent of the ordinance through a cooperative working together.
Thanks, Mr. DeGraw. Excuse me. Let me see if there's any questions for you. Start. Mr. Quist.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, are you in requesting the defeat of the ordinance? Is it in part because there's an objection to just the idea of having lapsed funds for maintenance? Like, is it an objection to the mechanism?
The mechanism, I would state, and I want to make sure I understand your question, Mr. Quist. The district does not object to funding building maintenance. So I would say yes, it's the mechanism of affecting a lapse through the ordinance. And also the size of the lapse would be significantly higher than any in recent history that I've seen, and so that would cause the trickle-down impact to state funding. And now, to be fair, I know language, or at least correct me if I'm wrong, language has been put in to hold the district harmless from, but I just think there's a cleaner way we could do it. Reduction in state funding, then the borough gives money back, and then, I mean, I think we can accomplish the intent without the ordinance. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
You said something about how the proposed lapse ordinance would affect the foundation formula aid. Could you say a little tiny bit more about that?
Yeah, so as part of, and you'll see this if you have, you can reference copies of the presentation on Monday. Part of the basic need entitlement top line that the state comes out with, part of that is subtracting deductible impact aid. And that deductible impact aid number is derived from dividing the required local contribution by the actual contribution. And so if the actual, unfortunately the state would consider a lapse of funds affected by this ordinance as a reduction in the actual local contribution. I know there's a dispute between the borough and the state's philosophy on that, but the state would go by its guidelines. Because that local contribution, the actual contribution, would be reduced, it would increase the amount of deductible impact aid that the state could subtract off of that basic need entitlement. And that basic need entitlement is generated by the state foundation model that we went through on Monday. So, did I answer your question?
Mr. Lejeski?
So along those same lines, is that the state could or the state would?
I actually had a conversation with the state yesterday. They go through, in March, they go through what's called a disparity test, and they do review all local contributions as it applies to the impact aid revenue that the district receives, and they indicated that they would.
Okay, then along those lines, for every dollar of school district money going to maintenance, how much less does that translate to out of state dollars?
Going to maintenance or?
To the school district
to this-
facilities FMR.
Yeah, it's to the FMR.
Right, so if the school district
Okay.
lapses
The-
$1
okay.
into the school district FMR, how much less state money is expected? Is it 1 penny? Is it 50 cents? Is it,
Yeah,
what are we looking at?
the number that I roughly calculated was if there were a $7 million lapse per the ordinance as it stands now, it would be roughly $1.6 million, right in that range. So about one.
Sounds like 15 cents or something.
Yeah, 1/7 roughly. Yeah, 15 cents. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Mr. DeGraw? Ms. Major, do you have any questions for Mr. DeGraw?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you.
I'll
I'm
ask
sorry,
one
Mr. Lejeski.
So, are you representing yourself or your position within the school district, or what's your capacity here?
I'm representing the school district, Chief Operations Officer of the school district.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any final questions for Mr. DeGraw? I don't see any. Thank you very much. Mr. Turney, you're up next, and if anybody else wishes to speak on any item that's on the agenda but not available for public hearing, there's a chair. So, Mr. Turney, you know the routine.
Yeah, Frank Turney, TURNY, 1734, Lacey Street, B. First of all, the politics, it's been like the weather this year. It's unpredictable. Anyway, I see that I talked to the clerk today that the resolution coming up December 13th on the 90% royalty resolutions, affirming that resolution of Mayor Sampson. And I'd just like to encourage, if you get a chance, you can go to YouTube and look up Walter Hickle's Broken Promises. It was really informative. I was listening to it 2 or 3 times a day. He fought for our 90% oil royalties. He knew we were screwed, and I believe that he did file a lawsuit. What happened, what I'm hearing from the people more knowledgeable than I am, that when Tony Knowles came into office, everything was squashed, so got back to the 50-50. So I just encourage you to take a look at Walter Hickle's comments. And also, of course, I've quizzed just about all the candidates regarding whether they would file a federal lawsuit against the feds if they were elected, and I know that Begich did say so, and I finally caught that after sending personal mailings, Mike Dunleavy, I confronted him on KFAR. He did state if he was going to be elected governor that he would sue the feds for our 90% royalties. So I'm going to let his feet get wet, but we got to hold him to the fire that he does that. And I think some of these resolutions will help also. Anyway, and also December 15th is Bill of Rights Day. And maybe this year I'll bring a cake. For the past 17 years, our city council has shared reading those 10 amendments. In fact, last year, the Boy Scouts Troop 92 read them publicly, and hopefully they'll be again this year. So I will bring a cake down here. It would be nice. I know over the years, the presiding officer told me they didn't have time to read those 10 amendments, and it's important because that's what you're all sworn to an oath under, to uphold the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, as well as the United States Constitution and Alaska's Constitution. So I will bring the cake, but I noticed when they didn't read it, they ate the cake. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Attorney. Let's see if there are any questions.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, Mr. Lajewski.
You're going to have to speak up. I don't have my earmuffs on.
Yep, Mr. Attorney, would you please look at the agenda when it comes out for the first Thursday in December?
Pardon?
Would you please look at the agenda when it becomes public?
Is that on Thursday, December 13th?
The first Thursday in December. I don't remember the date.
Well, that's fine. That's what I do to the city council. The closest we can get to December 15th, on or about, that's when we share it. So we'll be sharing it here on the 13th. I hopefully that maybe the presiding officer can share, each one of you share reading that. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Gray's got a question too.
Just my suggestion.
Was the video you sent me earlier, is that the one you were referencing in your comments?
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Exactly. I believe I put Mayor Bryce Ward's name above that. Hope you take a look at your Facebook email. That I tell you, it's really informed education for everybody. That most of our young people, young generation, don't even know what's happening. When I mention 90% royalties, they say, "What happened in 1910?" Anyway, thank you.
Thanks. Let's see. Anybody else have a question for Mr. Attorney? Ms. Major, do you have any questions for Mr. Attorney?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Attorney. There's 2 empty seats. If anybody has any public comment on anything that is on the agenda but not available for public hearing, I'm not seeing anybody coming forward, so I'll close public hearing item A and open public hearing item B, which is public hearing on anything or public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. And I have signed up for that Amy Geiger and Melanie Hadaway and Janet Cobb. So Ms. Geiger, if you want to take a seat, and we'll start there. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Amy Geiger. I reside at 4400 Stanford Drive, Fairbanks, Alaska, but I am here on behalf of Explore Fairbanks today. Welcome. I just wanted today to point your eyes towards our brand new 2019 Visitor's Guide. This is would be considered probably the cornerstone or the foundation of our marketing efforts, and we print about 190,000 of these guides, and they go out to a wide variety of folks. We use them in travel trade, to promote through travel agents, to promote through tour operators. We also bring them to meetings and conventions. We also bring them to distribute throughout the state to a variety of DMOs, but the lion's share of them go to vetted people that have shown an interest in coming to Fairbanks, and we mail them the guide. Many of them through inquiries, and so we actually get addresses specifically for those folks, send them the guide. So that's the main thing I just wanted to let you know. The guide showcases a lot of our partners via regional listings, and This visitor's guide is designed to engage and lure people to Fairbanks. Each year, the guide evolves a little bit and is refreshed in various ways. One of the things that we did this year is we very clearly defined what we consider Fairbanks' 3 seasons through visitor lenses, which is kind of different than I think we define them as locals. So we've been talking about midnight sun season and aurora season for quite a while, and now we've expanded to a 3rd season, which we call winter. And so those are our 3 seasons, and marketing them in different and various ways. The aurora season, of course, is much larger than most people appreciate. August 21 through April 21 is what we have defined that as. And so we continue throughout the guide and in our conversations with folks debunking the idea that you can't see the aurora unless there's snow on the ground. So there's a disconnect there with folks, and we continue working on behalf of that. Because the aurora is so hot, such a popular topic, it became the cover of our guide for the 2nd year in a row. Wanted to let you know this is Amy Jack Johnson. She's a local photographer, and we're very proud of the fact that throughout the guide we've utilized many different local photographers. So that's been a really nice thing to do. We also wanted to point out that in the middle of the guide we have a BRC card, which we're now using to talk about our new Aurora Tracker, Aurora Midnight Sun Tracker, which is a new, very cool tool on our website, which is actually getting a lot of traction on the website. So 2nd most popular page after the home page. And then lastly, towards the end of the guide, we've redesigned it so that it's a more comprehensive sort of trip planning and general info guide, which I think is much more user-friendly. And then we seal the deal with selling winter. So we start with summer, end with winter, year-round guide. So thank you very much. And thank you for reinvesting bed tax dollars into Explore Fairbanks and the visitor industry. We really appreciate it. And welcome to all the new faces. It's good to see you here.
Thanks, Ms. Geiger. Let's see if there are questions for you. Any questions? Mr. Gray?
I don't have a question. I just want to say bravo for a continued good job on this. I think this is really a bright spot for Fairbanks, so thank you for all you guys do.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, really.
Any other questions? Ask Ms. Major if she has any questions.
No questions, thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Next, we have Melanie Hadaway and Janet Cobb. And if you could, do you each want to give separate testimony? Is that the plan? Or are you working together? Okay.
Yes,
so if you could each give your name and spell your last name and your general neighborhood.
My name is Melanie Hadaway. I live on Coyote Trail in Goldstream. It's Hadaway, and I'm here as in my capacity as the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for the school district.
And I'm Janet Cobb. I live in Fairbanks, downtown. My name is COBB. So Ms. Hadaway and I are here tonight to give you some highlights from the school district. So in an effort, an ongoing effort to improve school security, the school district is currently piloting an added security feature at Joy Elementary School that includes a camera, intercom, and a buzzer at the school's main entrance. Main school doors are unlocked during the regular traffic flow in the morning, and then after the morning bell rings, the doors will lock. During the day, if someone comes and approaches the main entrance, they'll press a well-marked buzzer at the front door that alerts school staff, who can screen the visitor with a camera and even talk to them before buzzing them in. The system is fully integrated with both our voice-over IP phones and our video surveillance centralized systems. And Joy has had this system operating for about 8 weeks now, and it's been received very well by their entire school community. Similar devices are scheduled to be installed and piloted at Tanana Middle and North Pole High School during this school year. And once the pilot's complete, we plan to install this type of device at all schools throughout the district. We're also expanding the use of video surveillance systems at all schools, and as part of a multi-year technology security upgrade project, we've completed installations at all but 4 of our schools.
And while Janet talks about technology, we're also continuing to focus on increasing student achievement for all students, primarily through our initiative of ongoing personalized learning. Dr. Karen Gaborik actually presented to this assembly in February of 2017, and since then we've continued to have growth in our elementary, middle, and high schools, focusing on improving our student-centered instruction. In September, our district in-service day focused specifically and solely on culturally responsive education, so helping our teachers and our school communities to really look at individualized students and meeting the needs of those students. Another aspect of personalized learning is continuing to expand options for families. We have 3 new K-8 schools this year that have added 7th grade, and we continue to increase our ongoing e-learning and online learning for mostly secondary students. We also are always looking at our curriculum to make sure that we are providing skills not only needed academically, but those collaborative and habits of work and life to produce future-ready students. So starting in January, we'll be looking at a review of both our secondary English language arts and K-12 social studies curriculum. And so we'll be looking for stakeholder input and getting some input about what do we want those future graduates to look like here in our community as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Great timing. So. Let's see if there's any questions. Mr. Quist?
Thank you. The stakeholder input, well, what kind of form will that take?
Right now, it looks like we've instituted I guess it's a platform called Let's Talk, which allows for a lot of different input from parents and community members on a variety of school district topics. We're probably also looking at some community meetings. Our challenge is always that when we invite stakeholders in, to find a time that gets everybody in that allows that to happen. So we really are looking for input on from a widest variety as we can. So we'll see how we can do that.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
Ms. Williams, sorry.
What sort of video surveillance do you have in the schools?
We use Milestone for our video surveillance, and it's a centralized system.
What kind of areas do you surveil?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, at secondary schools, it can have anywhere from 30 to 50 cameras. It's inside the school, lots of areas for administrators to be able to see all aspects of the school, and then usually entry points outside and, the facility in general from outside. Elementary is a little less robust, where we have maybe a 6-camera system where we have the main entry doors showing out from there, and then a few cameras internally. Mm-hmm.
There's additional questions. Mr. Tacky?
Well, I'm just curious, how long do you store the footage for?
We aim for 30-day storage. Since we've been building this out for 4 years, though, disk storage always seems to be an issue, and there's, a camera that might catch a tree, limb moving, and it's recording 24/7, and so our goal is 30 days, but sometimes we miss that mark, but that is the goal.
30 days of actual motion, though, it's not recording when
Right, yeah, the cameras will shut off and then come back on when they get motion.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Other questions? I guess I had a quick question. The pilot program at Joy, has that been working fairly well?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting talking with the principal. She, when she first notified staff and her parents, there was quite a commotion over it, thinking, oh, this is going to be a real inconvenience. And then once they started in the first few days, the parent response was really very positive, and parents were coming in saying, oh, I'm so happy for this. It makes me feel like my, child is so much safer in this school.
Thanks. I'm a Joy parent, so I'm used to it.
Okay.
It works pretty seamlessly.
Good.
Any other questions? Ms. Major, do you have any questions?
No, they've been asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down and sharing that. Okay, I have 2 empty chairs for citizens' comments B. This is items not scheduled on the agenda, so it could be anything. If there's anybody else who wants to come forward and provide citizens' comments, now's the time. Seeing none, so citizens' comments B will be closed for now. That will take us to agenda item 7, approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Approval of the consent agenda passes all routine items indicated by an asterisk on the agenda. Consent agenda items are not considered separately unless an assembly member so requests. If the consent item to be removed is an ordinance up to be introduced, advanced, or referred, it takes 2 assembly members to remove the item from the consent agenda. In the event of such a request, the item is returned to the general agenda. Does anyone need to declare a possible conflict of interest for items on the consent agenda? I'll check in with Ms. Major and see if there's any declarations there.
There is none. Thank you.
Are there any other items to be removed from the consent agenda before it's read? I don't see any here. Ms. Major?
No.
Madam Clerk, could you please read the consent agenda?
Approval of the minutes. Special Assembly meeting minutes of October 11th, 2018. Regular Assembly meeting minutes of October 11th, 2018. Communications to the Assembly. Memorandum from April Trickey, Borough Clerk, regarding the appointment of Canvas Board members for the November 20th, 2018 service area elections. Memorandum from Mayor Ward regarding delegation of authority during temporary absences or disabilities. Consideration of the calendar, new business, ordinances to be introduced in advance to public hearing. Ordinance number 2018-43, an ordinance rezoning Linda West subdivision, lots 1 through 2, Linda East subdivisions, lots 1 through 2, Alice subdivision, lot 1, section 14, Township 1 South, Range 2 West, Fairbanks Meridian. Government Lot 61 West, Government Lot 61 East, Government Lot 63, Government Lot 64, Government Lot 80 West, Government Lot 80 East, Government Lot 79 North, Government Lot 79 South, Government Lot 78A, Government Lot 78B, Government Lot 82 West, Government Lot 82 East, Government Lot 83 West, Government Lot 83 East, Government Lot 84A, Government Lot 84B, Government Lot 85 from General Use 1 GU1 to Rural Residential RR or other appropriate zone located on Roland Road and Linda Lane west of Chena Pump Road, rezone 2018-006. Sponsor Mayor Ward. Refer to the Committee of Whole on December 6, 2018, advance to December 13, 2018 for public hearing. Ordinance number 2018-44, an ordinance authorizing the direct sale of a portion of Section 23, Township 2 North, Range 1 West, Fairbanks Meridian, to a mining claim holder, Big El Dorado Creek. Sponsor Mayor Ward. Refer to the Committee of Whole on December 6, 2018, advance to December 13, 2018 for public hearing. Ordinance number 2018-45, an ordinance amending Chapter 21.28 Fairbanks North Star Borough Code regarding air quality control program, Fairbanks North Star Borough Code 1.20.080 fine schedule, and Chapter 4.12 regarding Air Pollution Control Commission. Sponsor Mayor Ward. Refer to the Air Pollution Control Commission on November 27, 2018, with recommendation due back no later than December 3, 2018. Refer to the Committee of Whole on December 6, 2018, advance to December 13, 2018 for public hearing. Ordinance number 2018-21K, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2018-19 budget by appropriating $140,068 in federal pass-through grant funding to the special revenue and/or capital projects funds for the acquisition of emergency management, related equipment, training, and exercise. Sponsor Mayor Ward. Refer to the Finance Committee on December 6, 2018, advance to December 13, 2018 for public hearing. Ordinance number 2018-21N, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2018-19 budget by appropriating $125,000 from the general fund balance to the multi-year general sub-fund and/or capital projects fund for projects associated with state and federal regulatory compliance and hazardous materials. Sponsor Mayor Ward. Refer to the Finance Committee on December 6, 2018, advance to December 13, 2018 for public hearing. And that concludes your consent agenda.
Thank you. I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. And consent agenda.
Sorry.
Moved by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Tackey. Since Ms. Major is on the phone, I'm just letting members know all of our votes will be roll call votes tonight because we have a telephonic participation. So, Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Quist.
Yes.
Mr. Lojewski.
Yes.
Mr. Tackey.
Yes.
Ms. Like.
Yes.
Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Ms. Major.
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Ms. Sanford.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none,
9-0.
the agenda and consent agenda are adopted 9-0. That takes us to agenda item number 10, messages from the Borough Mayor. Mayor Ward.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This is my first assembly meeting, so it's been an exciting week, last 2 weeks here, and we've already started budget schedules for this upcoming year, and have had a great time meeting with our departments and staff. I was at the library, I think, yesterday. All the days are kind of blurring together, but having a great time. We've got a lot of great folks that work here at the borough, and I look forward to working with you all in the upcoming year. So that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Any questions for Mayor Ward at this point? Ms. Major, do you have any questions for Mayor Ward?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right, and that'll take us to item 11, reports of special and standing committees. So I'll mix it up and ask Ms. Major if you have any reports to start off with.
No reports. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Tackey?
I have nothing to report.
Mr. Lejeski?
No report.
Mr. Gray?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Sanford?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Williams?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Quist?
Thank you. Well, we have the resolution that was advanced from capital projects and legislative priorities on our agenda. Otherwise, that committee is not scheduled. The next meeting of the Air Pollution Control Commission will be taking a look at the ordinance that's being advanced, and the Sustainability Commission doesn't currently have an agenda published. Next meeting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Quist. Ms. Like?
Nothing to report.
All right, and I don't have any special or standing committee reports either. So that takes us to the end of our agenda items before our 7 o'clock public hearing begins. Looking at items that we could take up now, I'll ask the body if you think that we have enough time between now and 6:50 to organize the assembly.
I say go for it.
Okay, then we'll take up under consideration of calendar new business resolutions, item B. This is reorganization of the assembly. Nominations were taken at the Committee of the Whole work session on November 1st and are as follows. Presiding officer nominees are Matt Cooper, Andrew Gray, and Christopher Quist. Deputy presiding officer nominees are Matt Cooper, Andrew Gray, Christopher Quist, Sean Tackey, and Angela Major. Candidates may address their qualifications prior to the election. Debate and discussion may precede the vote, and the assembly shall vote by secret ballot. The clerk will distribute ballots to the assembly, and they'll be collected by the clerk, borough attorney, and deputy clerk, who will leave the chambers and count the ballot. The clerk will notify the chair of the results. Please note that while this is going on, we are not in recess. The public session is still live, and so the microphones will be on. The order will be to elect the presiding officer first and announce the results of that election, follow that same procedure for the deputy presiding officer. So first, I suppose we will start with presiding officer, and I will see if Mr. Quist wishes to make any comments.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak in favor of the appointment or the confirmation of Matt Cooper as presiding officer for the coming year here at the Assembly. I think that his qualifications are well known to most of us here. I threw my hat in the ring last time. I think that I'm also very qualified for the position. One of the reasons was I think the process is a little interesting because, you know, if somebody nominates you, maybe you don't actually want the job. So I've spoken with Matt. He's keen on it, and I have every confidence in him, and I urge others to support him as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quist. Mr. Gray?
I will second Mr. Quist's comments. I fully endorse supporting Matt Cooper as presiding officer. I think you do a great job.
Thanks, Mr. Gray. I guess I won't say anything, except thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate your confidence and support. So, does anybody wish to debate before we vote on presiding officer? Mr. Lejeski?
I'm just happy to have multiple competent, qualified candidates who could do the job.
Absolutely. I'll second that. I think anybody on this body would do a fine job, so thank you. So we will, ready to vote, I suppose.
Oh my God. To be right back.
Remember, the mics are live, Mr. Gray. Ms. Major does not get to vote because there's no way to make her vote secret, and it's supposed to be secret ballot by code. I suggested carrier pigeon, but it's...
Then we'd all have to vote by carrier pigeon.
That's true.
But they have hand. Have unique handwriting.
Should have written with your other hand.
Needed.
All right. So the outcome is that Matt Cooper was elected to the presiding officer, so we'll proceed on to deputy presiding officer. The nominees, again, will be Andrew Gray, Christopher Quist, Sean Tackey, Angela Major. Again, each person will get to address their qualifications. Just a reminder that if there is a tie, we will vote until a person is elected. So I'll start with Mr. Gray.
Okay. Well,
Qualifications.
Well, I was honored to be nominated for presiding officer, but I'm happy with the outcome of presiding officer. I'd be equally honored as deputy presiding officer. I guess I'm rather comfortable in leadership positions, having been in one at UAF for the past 15 years. Also have served on various boards in a vice chair or chair position, and so I feel very comfortable with running of an efficient meeting, but I guess I'll just leave it at that. I defer to the body here as to which direction they'd like to go, but I'd be honored.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Quist?
Thank you. I think that I'm qualified to be deputy presiding officer for several reasons. I've been active with borough boards and commissions. I'm now in the beginning of my 5th year here on the Assembly. I have been the chair of the Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee. Although it's a small one, it's been very good running those meetings. I think that a well-run meeting is a very important thing, and I have every confidence that I would be able to lead us in the committee of the whole, and as well as perform the duties of the presiding officer as necessary. And I'd also be happy to entertain any questions if people have any, but thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Mr. Quist. And we can get to questions probably during the debate portion if there are any. Mr. Tackey.
I think I'd be qualified to be the deputy presiding officer because of many of the reasons expressed by Mr. Quist and Mr. Gray, and I think any of us would actually do a fine job in this position of running meetings. I think it's important to run an efficient one as well, and I've been the chair of the audit committee for the last year, and I feel like I've been able to conduct efficient meetings to the point and keep us on track, so that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Tackey. And Ms. Major.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to add, I know that everyone received my resume, I think, earlier today. On top of that, a big focus of what I do for work each and every day is chair meetings, and as part of that, have to sort of manage the multiple and multiple personnel who represent many different functional areas and manage their personalities as part of that. And I really consider myself and am seen as someone who can be a bridge builder when need be, bring people together and work collectively and collaboratively through solutions. I absolutely would bring that as Deputy Presiding Officer, make sure that our committee of the whole meetings are run efficiently, and then be there to support the Presiding Officer in any way that is needed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see if there's any debate or discussion on Deputy Presiding Officer before we ballot. Mr. Lejeski.
I again have the perspective that every single candidate would fulfill the duties of the job just fine, and we would be excellent as assembly, excellently served.
Thanks. Other debate or discussion? I don't see any, so it looks like we're ready to vote.
Thank you.
Okay, so no majority was reached in the last round of voting, so pursuant to our rules, there will be a runoff between Angela Major and Christopher Quist, and so the clerk can distribute a new round of ballots. After counting the ballots, Ms. Major has received the majority of votes for the deputy presiding officer, so Ms. Major will be the new DPO. Congratulations, Ms. Major. And as Mr. Lajewski said, a fine slate of candidates to pick from, so thank you all. And with that, we're going to recess until 7 p.m. All right. Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to call the regular assembly meeting back to order at 7 o'clock. We've got some new folks in the audience, so I will again indicate where the exits are in the event of an emergency. Take the closest exit. It'll get you outside the building. There's the main double doors you entered, plus 2 exit signs on either side. They'll follow them out to the outside if we have to. That brings us now to item number 12, which is our reports from representatives. We have no City of Fairbanks or City of North Pole representative tonight, but we do have Ms. Dominique from the school board. So, Ms. Dominique.
Thank you. I literally just got off a plane, came over here for a little bit, and then I'm here at the meeting tonight. I felt we had to have representation here tonight. We had the oath of office for our two new members, Aaron Morati and Choya Sandersons. I'm very excited to be president, and I'm not excited to be president because there are things that you have to uphold as president that I can't do as a board member, you know? So I'm really happy to be as president of the school board. I was voted in, and I will do the best job possible for our other board members. Would like to thank the Borough Assembly and Mayor Ward, Mr. Williams, and Ms. Brady for coming to our meeting that we had on Monday for the joint conversation with the Assembly. The administration is looking for volunteers to be on our parent engagement, policy, and legislative committees. We're getting volunteers from the community so we can have a broad focus when we have our meetings so we can get input from the whole community. We passed several resolutions on Tuesday, Alaska Native and American Indian Month for the month of November. We passed a Veterans Day resolution and American Education Week 12 to 16 November, but I feel we have American Education Week every week because we're educating our kids all the time. Friday, November the 9th is staff training. Schools will have early dismissal. Monday, 12 November, is professional development for all our schools, so schools will be closed on Monday the 12th. Our last school board regular meeting is 20 November. I'm sorry, schools will be closed on let me start again. On 20 November will be our last school board meeting for November, and schools will be closed on 22 and 23 November for Thanksgiving. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be, Tuesday, 4 December at 7 o'clock at the school board room. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Ms. Dominique. Let's see if there are questions. Any questions? I don't see any. Thanks again for hosting our joint meeting. I think it was good to have that discussion and have everybody in the same room, so I appreciate the efforts that went into organizing that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on to special orders number 13 during the break, I was informed that we erred in our voting process for deputy presiding officer in that there was actually a tie between Mr. Gray and Mr. Tackey, and so we're going to take that up under resolutions. Well, we have to vote on it again because of our voting error. So there will be a runoff between Mr. Gray and Mr. Tackey, and then there will be a vote for DPO between Mr. Quist, Ms. Major, and whoever wins the tie. So we'll go back and redo that process for DPO, but that will come later. So that brings us to special orders, and our first ordinance is ordinance number 2018-42, an ordinance authorizing the direct sale of a portion of Tract A of Alaska State Cadastral Survey 68-13, Section 11, Township 3 North, Range 2 West, Fairbanks Meridian, to an adjoining landowner. This is west of Himalaya subdivision. The sponsor is Mayor Castle. There is information on page 34. Mr. Lajewski, did you have a request?
I'd like to declare a conflict of interest, whereas the potential purchaser is a competitor to my rower viewing business.
All right. Ms. Dolan, did you want to weigh in at all?
No, I think they determined last week that he had a conflict. Thanks.
So at our committee of the whole meeting last week, we did determine that Mr. Lejeski had a conflict of interest with this ordinance, and I'll concur in that decision again tonight. So Mr. Lejeski, will have you back up in a few minutes. Thank you. Mayor Ward, may we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cooper. We have Ms. Shelley Roughton here with Land Management for the report.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mr. Cooper said, I'm here to present Ordinance 2018-42. It's a direct land sale to Borealis Base Camp LLC. They are an adjoiner of the property. The property in question is located in the north portion of the borough on Himalaya Road, near mile marker 15 of the Elliott. Himalaya Road was originally constructed to service the pipeline in the late 70s, early 80s. In 1982, the state sold some properties in Bears Den subdivision, which was in Section 8 to the far left on the screen. To date, Himalaya serves approximately 215 lots, encompassing 3,000 acres of privately owned land. As we mentioned last week, a fair amount of the area out there, you've driven the Elliott, you know there's a lot of wetlands out there. In 2016, there was a jurisdictional determination performed by the Corps of Engineers. Development is permitted to 90 meters from the road. It's a little difficult to see, but you can see here there's two lines running north-south, two yellow lines. Those represent anywhere between 294.5 to 296 feet or 90 meters. The structure you see there in the corner is the yurt, the original yurt. The current development doesn't extend much past that. And I'll show you some drawings in a minute which shows that. Last week, Ms. Sanford asked about the fuel break. It was a part of a fuel break, and we did mention that they're required to have risk assessments performed every year. The stewardship forester did respond this week, and while he didn't file a report, he did give them a perfect score. There are no hazards, as he noted, that he normally sees: firewood storage, access issues, those kinds of things. The zoning of this property is GU1, which is represented in gray on the map. You can see the large majority of the area out there is GU1. The property in question is depicted by the green star. Adjacent to that, properties are RA20, and closer to the Elliott, they do become RA10 and RA5 with some GU1 smattered about. The adjoining properties range from 20 to 105 acres. Himalaya Road does not have a road service area, as we mentioned. In 2015, the Bears Den RSA was dissolved. That serviced at the time sections 5, 6, and 8 along the Elliott and the beginning of Himalaya Road. They chose not to collect taxes to fund the road service and to perform it themselves. And so you can see that didn't encompass much of Himalaya. Where am I? Just a little bit of history. In 2016, we were approached by a gentleman about purchasing or leasing 40 acres of land for the development of an Aurora-based business. Resolution 2016-29 authorized that lease, and the lease called for Aurora viewing and photography and all activities in support thereof. Winter of 2016 was their first season. They had one yurt, mainly focused on the photography and the viewing, had some catered provisions for their guests, that kind of thing. 2017, they began to plan the expansion and created a separate LLC. And with Resolution 2017-17, we changed the lessee name to Aurora Experts LLC, and that allowed them to separate the photography business and the overnight lodging. The change in the lease did acknowledge that change in use. summer of 2017 to present, there have been 9 viewing domes constructed. In November of 2017, just about a year ago, Aurora Experts LLC was sold to a local group, Borealis Base Camp LLC. This application for direct sale is made based on the fact that they are an adjoining property owner. Recently, this assembly adopted an ordinance which provided for additional mechanisms for the sale of borough land, including the sale to adjoining property owners, which is just this scenario. Here's the site plan. You can see the yurt and then the 9 original cabins there at the top. The gray water system was designed by a professional engineer. There is no discharge from any of the domes. The expansion of the yurt, the kitchen, the restaurant lounge area, that does have a mounted septic system, and it has been installed in conjunction with DEC and Goldstream Engineering. You can see here the yurts, they are serviced by propane. The collection tanks are under the decks there. There's solar, and the power is run on a generator, which is across that little lane there to the left, to the south of the domes. Excuse me. This shows the 2018 edition. It's approximately 2,000 square feet. It was attached to the south side of the dome, which takes it closer to the road, not closer to the wetlands. They are operational for the season. This shows the expansion, as well as a view of the property and the fuel break from the south, or from the north looking south. It shows the footprint of the business. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Actually, I don't. I want to mention that they are requesting this purchase because they do plan for their investment, and in order to do so through conventional financing methods, they do require fee title ownership. And that concludes my presentation. I'll answer any questions you might have, and I will mention that the applicant is here to testify and should be able to answer any concerns you have.
Great, thank you. And that actually is a great segue because that brings us to public hearing. And I'm going to open public hearing on ordinance 2018-42, and we have 5 people signed up. So we'll go through those first, and anybody who isn't signed up that wishes to testify can do so afterwards. So I'll first have Adriel Butler and Amy Geiger come to the table, please. Mr. Butler, go first, and we need your name, spell your last, and the general neighborhood where you live, please.
My name is Adriel Butler, last name Butler. Reside when I'm in town at Borealis Base Camp out on Himalaya Road most of the time. Just a couple of items. We do desire to purchase the property from the borough, as mentioned. We do have further investment that we want to make, and that mostly revolves around upgrades to the existing facilities. The road that we did put in this year needs to be further finished out. The road to our location needs help, and we know that for our guests as well as for those on the road, maintaining the road is a big part of our stewardship of being there. Currently, due to the record rainfall in this fall, there is currently overflow started on the road coming down off of a hillside that in the last 2 days has grown to about 10 inches thick on one side and about 2 inches thick on the other, which means probably within a week's time our vehicles will have a tough time. So we will have to get equipment out there to remove that ice flow so that it's passable for ourselves and for residents on the road. Just a couple of items. We are a benefit to Fairbanks in the sense that we do pay bed tax and we do pay tax. We employ about 10 people currently, and those are people who might not have steady work during the winters because most of them work in tourism during the summer, and so during the winter it is sometimes hit or miss for work. To address a couple of the concerns that I know have probably been brought forward as it relates to our added vehicles to the road. Yeah, obviously, if we are running overnight accommodations and aurora viewing, we do add some traffic to the road. It would be worthwhile to point out that over the last year, there has been dramatic increase of people who use that road as a jumping off point for accessing public lands. At one point in time, we counted over 18 trucks and trailers at the pipeline that were using it for recreational activities. We had a extremely wet fall, and on 2 different occasions we stopped all trucking of materials and gravel because the water was so much and the road was deteriorating. While other residents on the road who were also doing construction at that time kept running trucks until much later in the day. So yes, we definitely have responsibility. What I would like the Assembly to know is we do take that seriously, and we are a part of that community. As it pertains to drastic expansions, that's not in our intent. We are a boutique operator, and we have no intent to grow to a massive scale. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Let's see if there are questions for you. And I presume that you are the applicant based on your testimony for this direct sale. Is that right?
One of the owners and a manager.
Okay, thanks. Let's see if there are questions for you. I don't see any, so thank you very much. And in the empty seat, we have Drew Mayhew. If Drew can come forward. And Ms. Geiger, you know the routine.
Hi, I'm Amy Geiger, GEIGER, 4400 Stanford Drive. I am here in support of Ordinance 2018-42. Although Explore Fairbanks has a public policy committee that deliberates on these types of issues and generally produces a position statement, this came up rather quickly, and Deb Hickok, President and CEO of Explore Fairbanks, is out of town at the moment, and she asked if I would speak on behalf of the impact and contribution Borealis Base Camp is having on Aurora tourism. People are always looking for new and different, and Borealis Base Camp is both of these things. Properties such as Borealis Base Camp excite the mind and the imagination and contribute significantly to our reputation as an aurora viewing destination. Because of the high interest Base Camp has generated, we have facilitated numerous top-notch media coverage to the destination, to Borealis Base Camp, including we were in the Washington Post Sunday edition with circulation of 838,000. The UK, the Telegraph newspaper with a print circulation of 458,000, as well as online. And then a wide variety of smaller publications and radio, including radio on Cron 4 in San Francisco, and one of the most spectacular pieces is in the Current Sunset, where there's fully 10 pages, and I'd say at least half of them have been devoted to Borealis Base Camp. So as Adriel was saying, this is a smaller operation, but it is such because of the shape of the domes and because we're renowned as an aurora destination. It really is one of those sort of special things that solidifies us as an aurora destination. So I must say too that the aurora is different in a couple of ways. One is that we're not really in competition with a lot of other places that you might think. We're really in competition with Norway, Finland, Iceland, with places that also have very fully realized aurora viewing opportunities. This base camp with the igloo dome type shapes is mimicked in these other locations, and people have come to expect those to be sort of the high bar to reach in aurora destinations. So this has been of a benefit to us. And then also, just to also let you all know that we are also undergoing a competition statewide for aurora viewing. The rest of the state have sorted out that aurora viewing is a popular and important impact on our economy during the winter and shoulder seasons, and have also followed suit trying to capture that aurora market. And again, Borealis Base Camp. I just would like to reiterate that it is this type of property and the tours and associated activities that impact aurora tourism greatly. And we would be in support of them being able to purchase the land. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Geiger. Let's see if there are questions for you. Seeing any here, I'll ask Ms. Major. Sorry, Ms. Major, that I skipped you last time, but if I do skip you and you want to say something, please pipe in. Do you have any questions?
For Ms. Geiger or
Yes.
for the applicant?
We can actually bring that. At the end, I'll bring Mr. Butler back up if you have questions for him.
Okay, I'll wait for now.
Okay. All right, thank you. And in the empty seat, we have Bryce Dominguez. If Bryce wants to take the empty seat here, and Mr. Mayhew, if you give us your name, spell your last and your neighborhood, please.
My name's Drew Mayhew, last name Mayhew, and I reside inside the borough, 46 miles Steese. That's my normal residence. I live on the top of a mountain. I know what unmaintained roads, I know what's involved there, and just what little traffic it takes to destroy a road. I live at the top, and I'm the one that maintains it. So I know what Himalayas, I know what it can look like. And I'll be the one out there plowing during the winter at Himalaya. I am moving to Himalaya, so I will be there all winter long. So that's going to be my new residence for the winter. I'm the maintenance manager at Borealis Base Camp, so I'm an employee there. I am for the sale. That's pretty much all I got.
All right. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Any questions for Mr. Mayhew? Ms. Major, any questions for Mr. Mayhew?
None, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayhew. So we have, is Bryce Dominguez here? Okay. Deke, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce your last name.
Yeah.
So please come up and you can...
Is that right? I passed out some zoning maps to the assembly?
Sure, the clerk can take those and hand them out.
Great, thanks. I hope I have enough for everyone, but if not, appreciate it.
Thanks, Dina. And if there's anybody else who wishes to testify on this ordinance, there is an empty seat. Please feel free to come up and take the empty seat. If you could give us your first and last name, spelling your last, and your
Excuse me
name.
1 second, I forgot
Yep,
paper.
no problem.
First name is Deke, last name is Nakaborn, Naaktegeboren. I reside at 1855 Himalaya Road. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition of the sale of the borough leased land, and most of my reasons have really nothing to do with Base Camp personally, but they have to do with the transparency that the borough has brought into the neighborhood's attention. I feel like there's been very, very little transparency or public communication about what the neighborhood has been able to input on both the lease of the land and also now the sale of the land. I have never in the 2.5 years that this has been going on been notified by the borough. And I would also like to say that many people that also would oppose the sale of this leased land are not able to be here tonight because the notification that they got or they heard about it was too late. So if there's any kind of option that we can delay the vote for the sale of this, I would be much in favor for that. I'm not saying that I'm 100% opposed to the sale. I just would like to get more input from the business of Borealis Base Camp and more input from my local neighbors and neighborhood. That being said, I passed out a zoning map, and it contradicts what is up on the screen. The gray area next to the star, I believe that, I forget your name, sorry, but you said it was GU1, but it's actually rural agricultural. So I'm not sure what the discrepancy is there. My point is, there's only 3 parcels, I believe, in the entire neighborhood that are zoned GU1, and I believe those were grandfathered in with the 5 subdivisions that were made since 2003. And my point is that since 2003, Well, before 2003, the state of Alaska conveyed these lands to the borough for community development, and the borough made a decision 5 times over to make the zoning rural agricultural for a certain type of lifestyle. In a nutshell, that lifestyle is large parcels and 2 dwellings maximum. And my worry is not so much what's happening now, but what's going to happen in the future with all of a sudden a GU1 40-acre parcel being privately sold where they can continue to build their business unregulated. I've heard lots of rumors and things like that, which I don't believe in rumors, but there's definitely been an increase in traffic. I've heard there's going to be up to 3,000 visitors this winter in a very rural neighborhood. And I'm just concerned about the drastic change of lifestyle that me and many of my neighbors have been sold on by the borough. That being said, in 2003, I was able to find a newspaper article when the first subdivision was being sold. And if you just give me 1 second. I have a newspaper article from the Fairbanks Daily News Miner, and it says,
If I could just have you wrap up here quickly.
sure, this land has been deemed by the borough as ideal for recreational, dog mushing, and agricultural. And the borough made that decision 5 times over in the 5 subdivisions that they've sold off on public land auctions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Nakgaboren?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Gray has a question for you.
Well, I guess it's more for the administration, but it's kind of a question, but I believe how they were presenting it was reflective of what's on the same map that we received from you, because they were saying that the parcel for sale, potential sale, is GU1, but it's adjacent to that kind of teal or green color, which is RA20.
Okay. As long as, okay, I understood
But
that.
I think it's consistent with what you
Okay.
gave us. I think maybe it was confusing the way it was said.
Okay.
And maybe we can get a technical response from the administration on that.
Yes, Ms. Roughton, if you would, please.
On the zoning,
Yes.
GU1, it does begin at the end of Himalaya subdivision. The property in question is not part of Himalaya subdivision.
All right, let's see if there are other questions for you as well. Ms. Major, do you have any questions?
Actually, can I just get a clarification on Mr. Gray's question and the response from staff, just so I'm, because I can't see what staff is presenting. I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the property that is considered for sale is currently zoned GU1, and the rest of the Himalaya property is rural agricultural.
That is correct. As you come out from the Elliott, Ms. Major, Evans Hideaway is RA10, Bears Den is RA5, and then as you get into Himalaya Heights, it's RA20 for all of Section 12, and this property is in Section 11 beyond that, beyond the actual platted subdivision, and it is GU1.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Major?
Yes, it does, and I got some stuff. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other questions, Mr. Tacky?
I'm just wondering if you're aware that in RA zoning, there's like multiple uses, and there's actually isn't a restriction on buildings. Can't understand.
Yeah, and that's what I'm in favor for. The 2 dwelling per parcel is what the borough decided was appropriate for that neighborhood.
But I think that's where you're like, I'm trying to guide you along to like let you know that there's a lot of other different uses that you can have in an RA zone.
Yeah,
you can
and
have more than just 2 dwellings in there.
I understand, yep.
Thanks.
Other questions? Mr. Gray, did you have your hand up earlier?
No.
You're good.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much. I was going to ask Mr. Butler if you would mind coming back up. It sounded like Ms. Major might have questions for you, and she's on the phone. I failed to ask her if she had questions for you. So, and if anybody else wishes to testify on this ordinance, there is an empty seat, and you're welcome to come forward. So, Ms. Major, Mr. Butler is back at the public comment table. Do you have questions for Mr. Butler? He is the applicant.
Sure, I do. Just because we've received a lot of comments from folks regarding the road and the condition of the road, and I know that he briefly talked about some other uses of the road. I just wanted to get his perspective. Is it Mr. Butler? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So from your perspective, how would you be willing to address your neighbor's concerns if this land sale is passed tonight, in terms of both the growth of your business, the number of visitors that you expect, and the impact on the road?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of different directions inside of that. One is for the Assembly to know that on Himalaya Road there are 5 tourism registered businesses. We are the 4th of the 5 total. There is Nautique Sky. There is a Japanese aurora viewing. There is a Steve Busby with Great Land Adventures out of Anchorage. There is Aurora Bear Photography, which also operates a van. So there are multiple tourism operators on the road. Yes, we probably have more transportation, and I definitely believe that those who use something more are definitely more responsible for, because we definitely have greater impact on the road itself. So one of the things, we noticed last year that Frank with Aurora Bear was very kind with his four-wheeler to do a lot of plowing. We did plowing with a side-by-side. This winter, we are putting a full snowplow kit together so that we can maintain the road all winter, because we know that when there's a dump of snow, only relying on Alyeska to come out and deal with the road isn't responsible for the road itself or for our guests. So we have to maintain the road in a passable condition. We also were impacted by the ruts in the road. We did send our equipment down to the road to do our best to clean it out. And we did have our guests saying, hey, I can't get my car up. What do I do? So we definitely recognize that the road has to be maintained. One other item to be of note is that RA, I believe it was 2 weeks ago at this assembly, was passed for permitted use of aurora viewing up to 9 lodging units per parcel, dog sledding and snow machining as permitted uses. So whether it's RA or GU1, that is a permitted use of the land asked by the Fairbanks North Star Borough.
Ms. Major, did that answer your question, or do you have follow-up?
It does. Thank you.
Thanks. And then I will see if anybody else has questions in light of Ms. Major's answers. So Mr. Gray and Ms. Lake.
Well, I kind of meant to ask this earlier, you being the applicant and all, but one of the concerns we received was that there was talk of potentially there being helicopter rides or helicopters coming to and from the property. Is there any
so in the
plan for that, or?
I have no direct plans anytime in the next 3 to 5 years to finance or do that. In the 2 years that I've been there, there has been an R44 which landed when I was working with Frank to acquire the property, and that was by a set of investors who were looking at the property. And then there was another gentleman with a A-Star who works out of Anchorage, and he was in the area doing work for GVEA. And since he flies helicopters for a living, he was like, hey, can I come out and stay in the domes overnight? So he came out and he landed. So that's the extent of what we have. It's worthy to note that Alyeska runs a Bell, they run a Bell helicopter twice per day over top of the pipeline, and we hear it twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoons. And it has set down in our area because of four-wheelers and general use of the pipeline, which is not technically legal. And so they do fly it on a regular basis.
Thank you. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Ms. Lake?
So what type of vehicles are typically traveling on the road? Is it people driving their own personal vehicles more than like buses or vans?
Yeah, so to address that, we have 2 primary types of clients. One would be FIT, fully independent travelers. So in September and October, we had quite a few of those. Because during that time it was mostly Westerners, local Anchorage and Fairbanks guests, and they were self-drive. As the winter progresses and the roads become snowy and icy and all of those things, we work diligently to put our guests onto Sprinter vans or Ford Transits and economize transportation on the road so that we don't run multiple times and tons of vehicles coming out. And to give you kind of an idea of the amount of traffic that we generate in a standard operating day, today we were full. We had all 9 domes occupied. We had 2 cars that were guests. We had 4 cars that were staff. And we had 2 trips by a Sprinter van. So that would be 4, 6, 7, 8 trips that were kind of generated by Borealis Base Camp.
Ms. Williams?
Did you say already whether or how many more dome homes you plan to build?
So the extent of our planned expansion is 15. And we intend, so there's a couple of things from the owner-developer's perspective. We want it to be boutique. Boutique requires that you don't go to a scale where it's a commodity. And one thing that's helpful to the borough is that we've managed to push up the nightly rate significantly. Prior to our being here, the highest rate was Chena Hot Springs at $289 a night. We currently retail at $599 a night, and people are booking that for 2020 right now. So we're paying 8% on $599 a night to the borough for those. And the lodging cannot become, we can't put 100 units there. If you string them along the bluff there, your guests are going to have to walk a mile to get to their food. That's not the intent.
Any other questions for Mr. Butler? Ms. Major? Other questions?
No further questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? Just double checking. I don't see any. Thank you for being available to answer some additional questions. And I'll ask if anybody else wishes to testify on ordinance 2018-42. So please come up and take the empty seats, and we can have 2 of you up here at the same time. So, good evening.
My name's Dave Turner, last name Turner. I live on 2255 Himalaya Road. I live about 2¼ miles from the highway on the way to base camp, so it's about another mile down. I provide the dog sled rides for the guests. What I've noticed with the guests, my experience, is that it's a really premium experience for them. I think that all the activities that base camp is providing for their guests really are Aurora related, because along with the Aurora in Fairbanks, they do snow machines, dog tours, ice fishing. They drive up to the Arctic Circle. Those are, the main things that people come here for, and that's included in the Aurora. The Aurora is the main thing, but without those additional activities, they wouldn't have quite the experience. Also, I noticed that the guests, they're not staying 2 nights at Borealis Base Camp. They're staying in Fairbanks for a week. They're using other lodging in town. They're buying other services in town. So I believe the economic benefit, just from my experience with the guests, is that it's a bonus to Fairbanks in general, not just to base camp. This summer, I caretook the property while there's no activity going on from the end of April to the end of July. So I was the only one that visited base camp. And during that time, there was no traffic generated by base camp, but there was way more traffic than the previous summer from my experience of living there. And that was related to construction on the pipeline and increased activity from people using the location to access the public lands around there. So I do agree that we should come up with limits on the amount of traffic, and I think that their shuttles are are something good to keep people from driving themselves. But if they're doing activities away from that location, then that would generate more traffic because people have to leave in order to do those other activities. So I'm in favor of the sale.
Thank you. Let's see if there's questions for you. Ms. Major, any questions for Mr. Turner?
No questions, thank you.
All right, and I don't see any questions here. Thank you. There's one empty seat if somebody else wishes to testify. And sir, if we could have your name, spell your last name, and your neighborhood where you live.
My name is Nathan Thompson, Thompson. I live in North Pole, just off of Nelson Road. I'm a local contractor. I own Thompson Leveling and Services. And we did a bunch of work up there for base camp this fall. Very good work for us, kept us busy. We did a big gravel haul for them. We put in a bunch of helical piers for new units that will potentially go up. We were, during our big gravel haul, a lot of time it was really dry. There was no rain, but it did start to rain, and very tentative to what our truck drivers feedback from road conditions, and we did end up having to stop our gravel haul due to the fear of just the road deteriorating. So we got off the road and just due to road conditions until the weather cleared up and dried out and the road firmed up. They've been great people to work with. Known Adro for 2 years. During the winter time, I fill in for most. They did about 95% of their ice fishing guiding for them. My business slows down drastically during the winter, and I need something to do. I can twiddle my thumbs only for so long. So that's been really enjoyable, and I think they grade just the whole thing, what they're trying to do, the economic impact that it can have on Fairbanks, on the neighborhood, on additional revenue for the borough, bed tax, taxes on their property, can only come to a benefit, and helping the area residents take care of that road and wintertime maintenance on the road and summertime maintenance. I'm not sure if it's a road commission or anything means like that, but they've been great people to work with, and I'd be happy to see them own that piece of property and get developed and do what it can.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Let's see if there's questions. Ms. Major, do you have any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And there is one empty seat if anybody else wishes to testify. And sir, if we could have your name, spell your last and your neighborhood.
Yep. I am Jeremy Rogers, Rogers. I reside in Wasilla, Alaska. I am the other, Adriel and I make up 60% ownership of Borealis Base Camp LLC. Grew up in Fairbanks. My dad was Air Force, stationed at Eielson, so went to Eielson schools and lived here in Fairbanks until I was 17. Got a lot of friends here, went to church here. You know, Fairbanks is still what I consider my home. As an Alaskan, I recreate. I've got a remote piece of property. I know what it's like to have that fear of your way of life be impeded on by businesses or other people. So that's not something we take lightly. This fall with the rain, it happened to be when we were constructing. So there was this perception of all this new added traffic. It was construction traffic. When we're operating, you know, there's 3,000 visitors. If we do 3,000 visitors this season, over the course of our season, that's roughly 15 guests a day. So 3,000 people sounds like a big number. And it's not a small number, an insignificant number, but on a daily use, it's pretty inconsistent with kind of what's been projected by some of the fear. The road is our biggest concern, and being good neighbors is certainly not discounted to us. we have to have that road in a drivable condition if we expect guests to drive there. This year, we weren't expecting that kind of issue. That means this summer, we're going to have to invest our time and our money into maintaining that road and preparing it for another wet fall if that's going to become the normal. So overall, our intent is certainly to work with the neighborhood to minimize our impact and create more opportunities for neighborhood input and participation through folks like Dave with his dog sled tours and Frank with his photography tours and other people that might be able to benefit from us being there. So I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rogers. Let's see if there are questions. Ms. Major, do you have any questions for Mr. Rogers?
No question. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate it. And there are 2 empty seats if anyone wishes to testify further on this ordinance. I don't see anybody coming forward, so I'm going to close public hearing on ordinance 2018-42. Look for a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Tackey. Mr. Gray.
Well, this is a question back to administration. One of the concerns raised in opposition is that there was apparently inadequate notice given, but I would like to just get clarification who received notice, who was required to receive notice, and what kind of notice about this process, just as a reminder.
Yes, Mr. Rowden, would you like to address that?
Yes, the direct sale ordinance that was recently passed requires us to notify adjoiners and adjoining interests. Those adjoiners were the applicant themselves and the borough. There were no mineral interests or easement interests, but in the interest of hyper-transparency, we notified the neighborhood. We did not have to do so, but we did.
Just to clarify, as in the neighborhood, which
Yes.
parts do you mean?
Sure.
I mean all of them.
It is my understanding that we notified all of Evans Hideaway, which is in sections 5 and 6. We noticed Rolling Hills in section 5 and 6, and Himalaya Heights in section 7 and 12.
Thank you. That does answer my question. Thank you.
Additional discussion, debate? Mr. Quist?
I'd just like to comment that I guess to reply to some of the testimony, that I've found this whole process to be, as was just described, hyper-transparent, and I really appreciate that, and I don't think that the borough has in any way been keeping information from the public in this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Quist. Discussion or debate? Ms. Major?
No more comments or just in our debate from me.
Okay. I guess I have a question about Himalaya. Himalaya is a state road, is that correct?
I believe it was put in by the state. It was improved by the borough to Title 17 standards all the way to the pipeline when we did the Evans Hideaway and Himalaya Heights subdivisions. There was only one, I lost my word, one variance, and that was for the slope of the road there in the southeast portion of section 12. But otherwise, it is Title 17 standards all the way to the pipeline.
Okay. I was asking because I noticed in one of the slides it had an ADL number, and I didn't know if
it was an easement granted by the state originally before it was municipal entitlement lands.
And it continues to be a dedicated public right-of-way.
Yes, sir.
Sanford.
Actually, I have a question also. One of the letters that we received in opposition stated that during the period of their lease that they were out of compliance at one period or another. Do you know if that's the case?
That is not the case. We've never noticed them that they are in default. Anytime we had concerns brought to us from the public, we met with them immediately and addressed them. I can't remember a specific instance where they were out of compliance. Perhaps there was a perception, but like I said, the lease does allow for, quote, Aurora viewing and photography and all activities in support thereof. We don't have any clause that prohibits them from growth or from providing or accommodating side trips, that kind of thing. So I think the perception was that it was strictly for Aurora viewing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Quist?
Do we have a motion currently?
We do.
Okay, and we're just at the...
We're on debate right now. Yep. So Mr. Gray moved and Mr. Tackey seconded the motion to adopt.
Thank you.
Other discussion or debate? Ms. Major, I'll check in one more time.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I'll just note, the access to this parcel is on a public right-of-way. It's a public access. The parcel is zoned appropriate for the use that Borealis Base Camp wants to use it for. But I think that the owners Mr. Butler and Mr. Rogers have heard that they've got some neighbors who are unhappy with the way things are going. So I hope that you will take that to heart and work with your neighbors to improve the situation out there. Any other debate or discussion on this? Seeing none, and clerk, it looks like we are ready to vote.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Mr. Quist?
Yes.
Ms. Like?
Yes.
Ms. Sanford?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing and hearing none,
0.
the ordinance is adopted 8-0. Now we'll wait for Mr. Lejeski to return. Does the body need a break before we take up the next item, or is everybody still doing good? All right, we'll keep going. So we move to agenda item 14. This is the consideration of calendar unfinished business. Mr. Lejeski has filed a notice of intent to reconsider ordinance number 2018-41. And that is an ordinance amending Fairbanks North Star Borough Code Title 7 regarding the school district budget and the permitted accumulation of school district funds. There's information at page 40. Again, there's additional information in the yellow folders. Mr. Lejeski, if you wish to reconsider, you are the person who must make that motion.
So moved, and I'll get the exact language if you need better language here in a second. Hold up, I'm just getting it on
no problem
here. I move to reconsider ordinance number 2018-41.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lejeski and seconded by Mr. Gray to reconsider ordinance number 2018-41. And clerk, this is not debatable, is that right?
That's correct.
So we will vote on whether or not to reconsider the ordinance. A yes vote brings the ordinance back before us. A no vote does not. If the motion fails, then the motion is lost. So clerk, please call the roll on reconsidering ordinance number 2018-41.
Mr. Lejeski?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Ms. Sanford?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Quist?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
No?
Ms. Like?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none,
8-1.
the motion is back before us on reconsideration 8-1. Mr. Gray.
I'd like to I have a question for Ms. Dominique, if I could, first.
Okay.
Am I correct, Ms. Dominique, in understanding that there is some potential discussion underway either at your November 26th meeting or December 4th meeting about potentially returning some money back to the school district FMR?
Yes, sir. And I would like to read a statement for you, if you like.
Please. I mean, that's the chair will allow.
Yep. Please.
The school board is exploring how to fund the facilities maintenance reserve account for the school district buildings. Mr. DeGraw tonight spoke to you briefly about what we're trying to research. He's researching with the state, and the board will convene in a special session, I guess you would call it a work session, on November 26th, and we will vote on whatever the discussion comes out to be on December the 4th. That's our next scheduled board meeting.
Mr. Gray, do you have a follow-up?
Well, with that in mind and some other items, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd like to move to postpone consideration of this ordinance 2018-41 to the December 13th 2018 regular assembly meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Gray and seconded by Ms. Williams. Is that right? To postpone consideration of this ordinance to the December 13, 2018 regular assembly meeting. Mr. Gray, do you want to speak to your
Well,
motion?
I mean, based on some of that information from Ms. Dominique about that potential decision to, for the school board to perhaps return some money back to the school district facilities maintenance reserve fund. And I know that there's some other ongoing conversations between borough administration and the school district and the school board that might weigh in on this decision and might change some perspective on this ordinance. So I'd like to give a little bit of time to meet those considerations and then make our decision on the 13th.
Discussion, debate on the motion to postpone consideration. Mr. Lujewski, then Mr. Tacky.
I think we're best off if we take action tonight. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Mr. Tacky?
I would be interested in hearing what the administration's position is on the delay in timing. I know Mr. Williams has concern about timelines with capital, et cetera.
Sure, Mr. Williams?
Sure. Well, I mean, for the timelines, if we're going to do capital projects from that school district FMR fund, I mean, we probably need to get contractors going, go through the RFP process pretty quick. I mean, December, we're probably pushing it pretty close, but I think we could work with that timeline. But as far as the philosophy from administration, I'll defer to Mayor Ward.
Mr. Williams, I think, the constraints that we have as far as getting stuff to construction season, it would be tight, but we can make that work in December. Philosophy-wise, I think, continuing to work with the school district on this issue is probably in the best interest of this assembly and that body.
Mr. Gray?
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to speak to again, is that we had a very productive meeting, I felt, on Monday with some very good open dialogue that's been needed between the school board district and the assembly and administration. And I'd like to, if there's some sort of consideration about some money being returned to the FMR, just based on the discussions we've had as a show of good faith, and I'd like for us to continue this transparency and openness and kind of good faith amongst each other. So
I have Ms. Sanford and then Ms. Dominique.
I agree with Mr. Gray, and I think I would just hope that Ms. Dominique, you would hear that there is some urgency from this body as we're considering this, and that I would be very unlikely to consider a further postponement.
Ms. Dominique?
Okay. I just want to say I was just voted in as the president of the school board. So I would like to, in good faith, acquire your patience while we work through this ordinance.
Mr. Tacky? Then Ms. Dolan.
Oh, I'll defer to Ms. Dolan.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify something about, I don't know of a mechanism for the school district on its own to transfer money back into the facility maintenance reserve fund. So it would have to be some form of this ordinance. I don't know how that would work. It would depend on what the school board does. But I just want to be clear about that it would take some type of an action or an ordinance. It wouldn't be just a matter of transferring those funds over.
So speaking hypothetically, could the district adopt a resolution supporting that, and then we could enact an ordinance based on that resolution?
That would, yes, but that wouldn't be able to happen then at the December 13th meeting because your ordinances have to be introduced in advance. So you'd be into January.
There may be ways procedurally we could talk about that, but that's a good point. Okay. Mr. Tacky, did you want to?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to just speak against the delay. I think that if we voted on this, there's always time that we can make changes to ordinances. We can implement another one that's drafted after we have a discussion, but I think that this just clarifies the rules and discussions much cleaner. And then it's like, hey, this is the parameters that we have to work with this, and then we can talk and move forward. There's always ways to get more funding from the borough than there is to get it from the school district. So like you can always come back to us to get more funding. We're the backstop for the school district. we've in previous times waived the lapse. So I think that getting ourselves these rules in place and then we have those discussions later on would be best. So I think putting this forward now so we can move forward and have direct rules. That's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Tack. You have Ms. Dominique, or I'm sorry, Ms. Williams and Ms. Dominique.
I'm worried about one of the things that Mr. DeGrasse said earlier, which is that the school district, the assembly had given a certain amount of money to the school district to use as part of its budget, and then when they didn't spend it all, the ordinance would say that we're taking that money back and putting it into what my understanding was from the discussion 2 weeks ago, a dedicated fund for school district maintenance. I don't quite understand where that money that we're suggesting we're taking out of the school district budget to put in the maintenance budget, whether that money is now entirely considered to be the assembly's money, the borough's money, or if it somehow still can be counted towards the local contribution to the school district. I'm not sure who can speak to that.
Ms. Brady?
Great.
I can attempt it. I'm not a school district funding expert, but my understanding of what the State Department of Education and Early Development says is that if that money that comes back in our current ordinance as a lapse, it then offsets the amount that the Assembly appropriated effective July 1st. So they net in terms of how the Department of Education looks at school funding and the local contribution. So Mr. DeGrasse spoke of, some of the different impact aid deduction and some of those other things. The net effect is that they get less school funding in that year. The ordinance has a provision that it's the intent of this body to make that whole. So that I think it was $1.5 million was his best estimate. The intent would be in the budget process that the mayor could bring forward a recommended budget, or the assembly on the floor on his budget could make the school district whole, so to speak, for that $1.5 million deficit from that would be a hit from having to take that lapse money back. And I know that's kind of complicated, so go ahead and ask more questions and try and work it out here.
Where would that 1.5 million that we would be giving back to the school district end up going? Back into the general
part
fund?
of a local contribution in the succeeding year.
So if I could clear, it would be a bit of a lag, right?
Yes.
Ms. Dominique?
But this is what the research is that Mr. McGraw is doing with the state right now. We want to make sure that it's only going to be a $1.5 million hit to our fund, and we also do trust in the assembly to make us whole. But we just want to cover the grounds with the impact aid and assure that we're not going to have any additional funding coming from us from the state.
Thank you. Mr. Gray and Mr. Lajewski.
Well, sure. I guess I was kind of looking at this motion as a compromise. I mean, one of the things that the school board reiterated several times Monday night was the need for a little bit more time. This is an attempt to strike a balance at giving a little bit more time, but not an excessive amount of time. And I think that, if we come back even on December 13th and whatever form we pass this ordinance, that's probably what's going to be more important about getting some of these projects off the ground, as opposed to whatever potential amount of money that the school board might recommend returning back that we would then pass in a subsequent ordinance in January or whatever. So anyway, thanks.
Mr. Lajewski?
So I guess I'd like to remind the assembly members who weren't assembly members yet, last spring, the school district came to us and we were crafting our budget. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but we wanted a little bit of wiggle room on how much money we were going to guarantee, not how much we were actually going to fund to the district, but how much we were going to guarantee. And we wanted, like, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million of guarantees, or of wiggle room, less than the maximum or proposed, actual funding amount. What the school district did was they basically came in and said, if you don't guarantee us every penny, teachers are going to get pink slips. And at our meeting, they seem to suggest that that's how they operate with the state. They'll basically hold the teachers hostage, ransom, whatever, for money. And, you know, I have to ask, why do they want us to wait? Why do they want us to wait? Right now, if this is a negotiation, we're in a good position right now. No one's holding teachers pink slips over us right now. We have the high ground where we can go to the table, have a good discussion, make a good decision. And if we delay long enough, that will no longer be the case. So I really encourage you to act now while we're still in a good position.
All right, I have Ms. Dominique, then Ms. Sanford, Mr. Gray.
I kind of want to hear what Ms. Brady had to say because she didn't get her turn in, but I do want to go right after her, if that's okay.
Ms. Brady, did you want to?
I was just going to clarify that we've been in this position. We have a current lapse provision where money comes back to us and goes into the school district FMR. And how the state handles that is it reduces the local contribution for that year. And that then has an impact on their funding in the successive year. And this body, the predecessor to this body, has made the school district whole through prior mayor's recommended budgets for that deduction, which we've had communications with the school district about how much that deduction would be in the funding, and then that's the amount that they've increased the local contribution. So I just want to make that kind of, especially for new members, as kind of a history of how it's worked.
Thanks, Ms. Brady.
I want to make my comment
Yes,
now
Ms.
to Mr.
Dominique.
Lejeski, basically. And if you remember back in April when we did come before you and the said 35 million, 32 million, whichever one you want to put up there, I was the one that made the motion that we do not cut anybody because of the money that was found, basically. So I just want to say that we have to be held in good faith. Give us an opportunity to clear whatever misunderstandings there are or were back in April, and let us move on this thing and be compromising so that we have a win-win situation so that we both can move forward and put some trust back into us.
I have Ms. Sanford, then Mr. Gray, then Mr. Quist, then Tacky.
I appreciate Ms. Dominique's comments, but I also empathize with Mr. Lejewski because I feel pretty ready to vote on this today. However, I think one of the things that I've been seeing play out as I'm getting up to speed on this is that there has been a lack of trust, and I don't see how we will ever mend that and ever get to a place where we are going to be able to move forward and get beyond what I've been telling my husband is this school board fund balance fiasco. That's what we're calling it at my house. But I mean, I want us in the years to come to be able to put forward legitimate budgets and not have pink slip waving around. And I feel like the way that we're going to get to that is by allowing them some time to come to us with a good faith offering, knowing how a number of us feel up here about some of the things that we saw on Monday. So I think the high road is offering them some time to deal with what is coming probably from us. So that's just my thoughts.
I have Mr. Gray, Mr. Quist, and Mr. Tacky. Mr. Gray.
Well, I think Ms. Sanford hit it right on the head. And I'm just going to also remind everybody who was here or not here that I think that this year, at least as far as working with the district and the board, while it was difficult and that fund balance did grow, I feel like when it came down to voting for the budget, there was actually very little testimony, I think, other than Mr. Dorn on the about education funding. So the year before that was a lot worse, in my opinion, with the school district kind of turning out parents in droves against us here, and I feel grateful that didn't happen this year while we still have the problem. But I think that we've come some ways, and we're trying to make headways here by reaching a common ground and building some trust, because we definitely have a trust deficit. So that's all. The only reason I bring this up is to have a little bit of time, not a lot of time, a finite amount of time.
Mr. Quist.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Dominique and then maybe a comment as well. So it sounds like maybe the administration and the Board of Education are of two minds on this ordinance, or maybe not. It sounds like the administration was pretty clear that, both at the meeting today and on Monday, that the idea of using lapsed funding for maintenance was basically a non-starter. But you're comfortable with this delay, so do you think that potentially lapsed money could be used for school district facilities maintenance?
I don't know what the real answer is. I agree with Ms. Brady, what she has stated here, and Ms. Dolan, what they both have stated. But I'm just saying that we need to be really crystal clear before we go and say, yes, we can make that move. Mr. DeGraw is saying that he's working with the state. He has talked to the state, I think, twice already, and he's trying to get a defined answer from them so that we can be assured that we won't be hit again, because we're doing the right thing by giving money to the assembly to take care of facilities maintenance.
Thank you. So, if I may briefly, so I would speak in favor of the postponement. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel I'm ready to vote on the ordinance too, but we have restarted this dialogue. It's going hopefully in a good direction, and so we'll have a couple more meetings under our belt on both sides of this, and I mean, that being said, I also agree with some of the other comments that I do think we need to be taking action on this one way or the other soon. So, thank you.
Thanks. I have Mr. Tacky, and then I'm going to check in with Ms. Major, and then Ms. Like, Mr. Gray, and then Mr. Lejeski.
I'm good.
You're good? Ms. Major, I wanted to check in with you real quick since we've been going down the list to see if you wanted to add anything.
Sure, thank you. I struggle with this one as well, just because I think, in part, I too am ready to vote on this today. I know we talked on Monday, that idea of, are we just kicking the can down the road? How much longer are we willing to do that? So I'm grateful for Mr. Gray for saying, hey, let's, have this on the December 13th agenda. So we have a little bit more information, hopefully make a more informed decision at that point, but without delaying it all the way until April, because I do think we need to have some resolution on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Like?
My question is for Ms. Dominique. We've talked a lot, I think, about Section 6 of the ordinance, which talks about the $7 million. But what is the school board's opinion at this point about Section 3, which talks about having that lower balance?
Well, I think Mr. DeGraw hit on that tonight, and he also gave another sheet tonight concerning the 4-year plan. You said the $30 million, right? You said 40
Well,
million.
this is 18% of the direct appropriation is the sort of the target for y'all to be at. So right now, the reason this is here is because it's so much higher than that.
Right.
So moving forward, I mean, it's my opinion that we should get to that. That might be more important for long term than however much it is per year.
Well, Ms. Like, I can put that on the agenda for the 26th of November, because I don't want to put us in a position where maybe board members are thinking something else, but I can put it on the agenda for the 26th to assure that we will speak about it.
Okay.
Mr. Gray?
Well, I'll reiterate what others have said, and I think I could be ready to vote on this now too. I feel like there are some questions that need to be answered between now and that's why, December 13th not very far off, which is about a month. But talk of pink slips and things like that. I think that that did come up at the meeting on Monday, and those being used politically, I think that's against the state. Definitely who it needs to be used against. I think we need to remember that the state is the one that needs to be forward funding education. It's not up to us, not up to the school board, not up to the school district. But we need to be, continuing to put pressure on the state that it's important that education is forward funded as much as possible. So anyway, that's my last comment on this. Thanks.
Mr. Lejeski?
So I said part of this at the meeting with the school board. I'm happy we had the meeting. I think it was a productive meeting, and it is moving us in the right direction. What I didn't say was I was also very disappointed because I thought it could have been much more. And I'll explain that. I was really hoping to hear a lot more opinions and diversity of thought from the actual elected school board members. Every single one of them represents the exact same people that we represent, except I guess we sort of represent them and they represent us, but anyways. And I was really disappointed, like with one question, I don't even remember what the question was. I remember I asked, and I was really hoping to hear from school board members, and the superintendent just answered for everybody. And I have no disappointment with you, Ms. Dominique, because you voiced your opinion exactly like I wished everybody else would have. So I was very pleased to hear you speak up when you did. But I guess the point I'm getting at is some people did speak, okay? And I think every school board member at least spoke a little bit. And I didn't hear any suggestions of how to make this ordinance better, a suggestion for an amendment or anything of that sort of nature. And I've just got a hunch that if we kick this down the road a few more weeks, the other side of Thanksgiving, I just have a bad feeling that that could happen again, that we are going to be stuck with another good reason to delay again, again. And I'm just saying again because I could just see this keep going and going and going. I'd like to put an end to it. And just one more comment, and I'll kind of conclude with this, but back to the strategy of asking for money and saying we must have X amount of money or else teachers get pink slips. I think that's wholly unethical. I think that's disrespectful to teachers. I've never gotten a pink slip. I don't ever want to get one. But I can imagine how that might feel even if you follow the politics and you think you're not going to get laid off. It's just, I think that's wholly unethical. That should never be used as bargaining tactic, negotiating tactic to get money from the borough, from the state, whoever. Teachers deserve more respect.
I have Mr. Tackey, then Ms. Dominique, then Mr. Gray.
I'd just like to articulate the same point that Mr. Lejeski just said. It was like, yeah, there's a new changing of the guard. We have Ms. Dominique, who's a new president, and I have high hopes and great expectations. I expect a lot, and I already see positive changes with that. But given that the administration still hasn't changed, we still have Dr. Gaborik, who is the superintendent, and I expected to see something it was well. Like, that's why I was kind of like flabbergasted when there was like no suggested changes or like how's this, or well, if you took back $3 million this year instead of $7 million or another alternative to be able to like come to a bargaining chip or something we could do, that would have been much more helpful in my mind. And I'm worried about this just getting kicked down again and again and again. So given that the first 30 days that you had, maybe not quite 30 days since it was introduced on the 11th of October, but like there could have been something. And so now that there's like going to be another 30 days about, will there be, oh no, just defeat this ordinance again and we can work something else out? I think that if we actually pass this and we say this is what we have, this is what's going to lapse, then you actually can come to that November 26th meeting and saying, okay, here's the groundwork and the framing that we have already in place that we're going to get, this much is going to be coming out. You don't even have to actually like decide on a specific number. You can say, oh, it's $7 million already, or we can always tweak that and introduce a new ordinance to make another change to that value. But I think that if we keep kicking it down, or we just say, hey, let's just defeat it because the administration doesn't provide any suggested changes. I expect suggest changes from Ms. Dominique because you speak in favor of that kind of thing, and I totally believe in you and trust you and other assembly or other school board members, but I don't know whether or not there's actually going to be any substantive changes or suggested changes from the administration, and it makes me nervous.
Thanks. Ms. Dominique.
I can only have you take me on my word. I mean, after all, after the meeting on Monday, I immediately went to the board secretary, scheduled the meeting for November the 26th, so that we could have the whole board in on all the information that we have concerning the ordinance, concerning our budget, and Mr. DeGraw, he's going to be a part of it as well. I can only tell you this is what I'm going to do as president. I give you my word that we need to vote it down, postpone it, or do something so that we can hold off. We're only asking for another 30 days, as stated already. I really don't think 30 more days is going to kill us one way or another, and I'm speaking assembly as well as board members, but we need to be able to develop things that we're going to do with this ordinance, because this came out, excuse me, in October. I wasn't even here. I was in Ireland when it actually came before the board, before the assembly. And I get back and I hear about all this is going on, and then I run for president. Oh, dummy me. But the thing is, I just need you to take me on my word, because I can't do anything else. I can't make you believe what I'm saying to you, but I can give you my word, and I don't do that very often. If something's coming down, I'm going to let it come down. But I'm telling you, we're getting together to resolve a very big issue. The $35 million, yes, that's too much money. But by law, we can keep certain portions of it. But we are going to do what we need to do to make this come together so that we both have a win-win situation. That's about all I can tell you.
Thanks, Ms. Dominique. And I'm going to interject here just for a moment. I'll save my comments for the end. But I do want to note that Monday evening, Ms. Dominique communicated with me suggesting that she was going to set meetings with the school board. And since her election as president, even though I've been as the kind of the interim acting presiding officer, she and I have been communicating on a regular basis about this. So I saw positive change in the relationship and the approach from the school board immediately. I'll talk more substantively when I get to the end here. So next I have Mr. Gray, and then Mayor Ward, then Ms. Williams, and Mr. Tackey.
All right.
Or Lojewski, I'm sorry.
See if I can remember everything I was going to say. Well, first, I just want to clarify my earlier comments. I don't condone the use of pink slips as a political tool, actually, at all with teachers. My point was that the state is who we should be lobbying for forward funding education. That was my only point. I had somebody very close to me in family that was a teacher and faced that very threat many times, and that was always a very tense time of year, and I understand that pressure, and I don't think that should be used as a tool. Secondly, I too share some of the concerns of the other assembly members about the meeting on Monday. I do I do understand why, but it was more reactive than proactive, some of the discussion, and I understand the reasons why, the time frame and everything. And third, giving this little bit of time to clarify some of these issues, if there isn't a substantive plan or what I would consider resolution, we can still vote on this ordinance as is or slightly amended, so that is still an option.
Mayor Ward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cooper. So I just want to, I'm used to also being the chair on a body, so I just want to help point out that we are on the topic of postponing. So we are, I feel like the conversation's grown a little bit, probably outside those bounds, but in respect to that, you do have your new presiding officer, you have the president of the school board, and the administration here that I think are all very committed to having those conversations regardless of what happens with the ordinance tonight. And Ms. Dominique spoke to that. I will also speak to that of being of having an open door with the school district. We're going to solve some of these issues. It may take a little bit of time, and I think Mr. Cooper spoke to that well at the meeting that we had. So to talk to that about delaying this, I think that's probably something that can be worked with if the assembly does decide to do that. Keep in mind too that the school board and your new mayor have had not quite 2 weeks yet on the job. So I feel we can make some good progress between now and December 13th.
Thanks, Mayor. And I am allowing a little bit of latitude in the conversation here as a basis for postponement is kind of the topic, but I know that it is broad. I next have Ms. Williams and Mr. Lojewski.
I would very much like to have an opportunity to hear the results of Mr. DeGraw's research with the state on the full effects of this lapse ordinance on the school board budget. So I am in favor of postponing so that he has an opportunity to do that research. I will note that I also noticed that the members of the school board seemed curiously reticent to express their opinions at the work session.
Mr. Lojewski.
Reticent, that's a $5 word. I don't think I've ever heard it before, but I know what it means from context. Anyway, I hope that doesn't show my lack of vocabulary. Anyway, sorry, back to the topic here.
Now that's too broad, Mr. Lojewski.
Yeah, sorry. I do want to remind you guys that and I don't know who gave the direction, but the school district did lawyer up on this issue, or at least beginning stages of it. Just put that out there, but also a more practical suggestion and directly to the topic matter. I know we have at least one assembly member who has a amendment on the table, and it sounds like you guys are probably, and I'm going to vote the other way, but are going to vote to postpone. But I would suggest first bring it up, put our fingerprints on it, put a few amendments as people wish, and then put it back on the, and I don't think table is the correct word, but I know there's a way to do that. Anyway, so that's my suggestion, is bring it up, amend it, and then delay, rather than delay from the outset.
I have Ms. Sanford and then Mr. Tacky.
I'll decline.
Okay, Mr. Tacky and then Ms. Dominique.
Just on the postponement and the discussions moving forward, even to me, whether we postpone it and vote later or whether we vote now and get it going forward and passed, we have something to work with, and I don't think that we suddenly can't have trust and communications and work to make a better relationship whether or not we pass this or not. That's one thing that is always that has dismayed me based on all these conversations, is the fact that, oh well, if you end up passing this, then we lose trust and we can't talk. Regardless of whether we pass it, we have a lapse ordinance already, and we should be talking about that. I mean, I think that we should be making the best decision for our community for this particular ordinance, pass it, and you can still have talks, still make more ordinances change. We can always change what we've already passed. So I think that just delaying it doesn't mean that we are suddenly distrustful.
So Mr. Tacky, Ms. Dominique.
Well, I have two comments. I have to comment back to Mr. Tacky. I would just like to offer agree to disagree on some things. We will continue to keep in communication with the Assembly with whatever issues there are. We had two people that showed up tonight to tell you about some of the things going on in our district. I didn't know about that, but I thought that was a good thing. And I hope we can continue to do that throughout the years. And I'm not trying to get away from what's on the table right now, Mayor Ward, but I just had to comment back to that. My other thing was the pink slips. Do you all realize that our pink slips are given because of the union agreement? I mean, I don't feel like we're putting them up as savage lambs or whatever the case you want to put it under, but we have to be in agreement with the union, and this is a union contract issue. We have to give them pink slips if we don't feel like we have enough money to pay for teachers for that next school year. They have to be given those by May. I mean, I know you think we're doing it because of the legislator and things of that nature, but like you spoke, Mr. Gray, I hope we have the Assembly working with us so we can get the forward funding that we need for our teachers, and we won't have to give any pink slips.
All right, so I do want to keep it, I've added some latitude, but I don't want to get into a rehashing of, all of the grievances that have arisen over time here. I know Ms. Dominique responded to a comment that was made, so I do want to see if Ms. Major has anything that she would like to weigh in on at this point before I move on down my list.
I have nothing further regarding the postponement.
Okay, thank you. So, and we are in the postponement. Mr. Gray?
No, I yield.
Mr. Lejeski?
When the Assembly's put in a position where if we don't guarantee additional, say, $2 million or pink slips get issued and the school district's sitting on 30, that's weaponizing pink slips.
We're going to leave that line now at this point. Thank you, Mr. Lejeski. Does anybody else wish to comment?
On the postponement?
On the postponement. If not, I will add a few cents here. I have long sought to find a resolution with the school district that was reasonable, that we could all agree on, and it's been challenging. We thought we had some resolutions. We thought the last lapse ordinance was a resolution, and it wasn't. And so, as I said a few weeks ago, I like the ordinance that was or is before us that we're talking about postponing now, for a lot of reasons. It provides clarity. My problem with it at the time is we didn't have a chance to have input from the school district, and now we're getting that input. And as I said, I've talked to Ms. Dominique on, if not daily, almost daily, since she's been elected school board president. I've discussed this with the mayor. I think that with Ms. Dominique and Mayor Ward working on this, that we ought to give them the opportunity to see if there is something that they can come up with. And if they don't come up with something, if the school board doesn't act and come up with a plan and it's December 4th meeting, then we have this ordinance before us on December 13th. If they do act, then we have other options. I mean, this is a bit of a, we're trusting that this is what they're going to go forward with. We'll see what they come forward with. And then we have all of our options before us after that. So I guess I'm in favor of postponement for that reason. I feel like Ms. Dominique is committed, I'm committed, and Mayor Ward is committed to working on this issue. I guess I have a question for Ms. Dolan, and that is, because I was kind of thinking on the fly earlier about timing, if we wanted an ordinance that we could get in place to, almost like a placeholder ordinance that would reallocate money from their general fund balance back to the FMR, could we go ahead and get a placeholder ordinance on the December 13th agenda as an alternative to the ordinance before us? This is a little bit...
So I don't know of a mechanism that you can do that. So you have to make, once you make funds available for education, they're available unless you have something like the contingency of the lapse or a restriction on the permitted accumulation in place. So I don't know of a mechanism other than what's before you for you to reach into their general fund and appropriate it back to you.
But we could conceivably amend the ordinance before us in a way that would lapse, say, a fixed sum of money back to...
You could, well, because then it's not a contingent appropriation. You have to make your funds available to education for that school year, which the funds you appropriated were. You can make that contingent on them actually spending it, and if they don't spend it, then the funds come back to you to use however, the FMR or whatever. But I can't think of a way, I don't know if Ms. Brady can, I can't think of another way for the district to essentially give the borough back those dollars. So that's what I was trying to say earlier, like I can't come up with an ordinance necessarily that's going to accomplish it other than a mechanism like the lapse ordinances that you've had in place.
Okay.
So you could put this in some form where it's a flat, if they're over a certain threshold, a flat dollar amount comes back.
Right.
That would be the closest I could come up with.
Okay, I mean, that helps. I think,
Yeah.
I guess my point is that if they do nothing, we still have the ordinance as is before us.
Right.
If they come up with a plan, then we can, in good faith, act on a plan going forward. And that may mean that if if the district adopts a resolution saying this is what they want to do, they've got an official action, we can rely on that and start working on whatever ordinance we need to accomplish whatever resolution Mayor Ward, the administrations, and the school board come up with. So I'm just trying to weigh out that there's a mechanism here. All right, Mr. Lajewski.
So we've got one regular assembly meeting in December. That's it. And I'm advocating, just so you guys know, to bring it up, consider at least Ms. Lake's amendment, talk about it, think about it, and then delay later. But really part of the reason is to get some of that thinking out of the way now, to hear about it, some of those issues now, because I don't know about you guys, but at that meeting, I'm intending on having my name on 2 separate ordinances and a resolution. So if you guys have a schedule like that, it could be very busy, and I don't want to be here at 2 a.m. on that one meeting in December trying to finish it up before the end of the year. So if you're in the same shoes, I'd say, let's think about it a little bit now and then move on.
All right. Mr. Gray, on the postponement.
Well, I'd like to, on Mr. Lajewski's point, I'd like to ask the clerk, but I think there might be an issue with doing what he proposes. Yes? No, maybe?
What's
the question, Mr.
specify what the
Well,
question is?
if we were to all of a sudden take up any amendments and then move to postpone again.
You mean defeat the postponement and then take up amendments and then try to
Right.
postpone it again within
Exactly.
the same night with the same motion to go to
Yes,
December 3rd?
exactly.
Your chair would then need to determine whether or not it was dilatory, which it would, I mean, it's the same motion, so it's
Okay.
dilatory.
All right, thank you.
By the definition.
Okay, anything else on the motion to postpone to the December 13th meeting? I don't see anybody raising their hand, although I'm looking at the mayor. Mayor Ward, any additional
No comments, thank you.
comments before we vote? Okay, Clerk, I believe we're ready to vote on the motion to postpone consideration of ordinance 2018-41 to December 13th.
Mr. Quist,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Tackey,
Yes.
Miss Major,
Yes.
Miss Like,
Yes.
Mr. Lojeski,
No.
Miss Sanford,
Yes.
Miss Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none,
8-1.
the motion to postpone to December 13th passes 8-1.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, Ms. Dominique, did you have?
I just want to thank you guys for giving us an opportunity to show that we can be trusted in good faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dominique. Does the body wish to take a short break?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do a 5-minute break. To order after a short break. We are now at item 15 on our agenda, which is citizens' comments, and this is back to citizens' comments Part A, items that are not scheduled for public hearing. Are there any citizens that wish to speak on items on the agenda not scheduled for public hearing? I'm going to open public or citizens' comments. I don't see anybody. I'm going to close citizens' comments. And then we're going to move on to item number 16, and this is consideration of calendar new business resolutions. We have one resolution, that is resolution number 2018-36, a resolution identifying and supporting legislative priorities and capital projects. The sponsor is the Assembly Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee. It is at page 44 of our packet. I'm going to request a staff report from Assemblymember Quist, Chair of the Assembly Capital Projects and Legislative Priority Committees.
Thank you. So we've seen this list, or I guess the 6 of us have seen this list as the Finance Committee, more or less, in the Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee finalized this recommended list, and in the order it is in the sections that are prioritized, and I would be happy to answer any specific questions, but I feel that's probably where it'd be most valuable, but we also have gone over this before, so maybe there aren't that many. But thank you.
Does that conclude your staff report, Mr. Quist?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I look for a motion to adopt.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Gray, seconded by Ms. Sanford. Debate and discussion on the resolution.
Sounded real feminine there.
Mayor Ward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cooper. So with this resolution, I understand that the committee has had an opportunity to weigh in on this, the previous assembly. As the incoming mayor, I do have a couple ideas and suggestions on what we could potentially do with this resolution. I'd like to see if it could be referred back so I could have an opportunity to weigh in with some ideas that may change the structure for consideration. Just to note for the Assembly, if that is done, then that means that we most likely would not be able to meet with the Interior Delegation here locally, as has been done in the past. But if someone's willing to make that referral, I'd be happy to carry that message down to Juneau after we get things sorted out.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ward. Additional debate or discussion, Mr. Quist?
So I have a couple questions for the mayor. So I'm guessing you're not concerned about the timeline as much. I mean, you addressed the fact you'll take the message to Juneau yourself. Because I mean, previously we had been on kind of a stricter timeline, and I guess that's not a question. But here's a question: you don't think that your ideas can be implemented? Because we have the ability to amend the resolution today. You'd like some more time, or?
Yeah, I'd love to have an opportunity to sit down with the committee or with the newly formed, I guess we haven't, does it still operate as the old committee?
We'll have to make a new one soon.
We'll have to make a new one, all right. So, there's some different strategy I think we could use when we talk about prioritization of our capital projects and legislative priorities. And I would love to bring some of those ideas to the table on how we present our legislative priorities to the legislature, especially in the upcoming session with some changes at the state level.
Mr. Quist?
So I'd like to move to refer Resolution 2018-36 to, and will I need a specific date, or can it just be the next meeting of the Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee.
Next meeting. So the motion is to
To
refer...
refer Resolution 2018-36, a resolution identifying and supporting legislative priorities and capital projects, to the Assembly Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee for then referral back, at its next meeting, for then referral back to this body. Do I need a specific date then, or can it just be the next regular meeting? Next regular meeting.
Okay, so the motion is to refer Resolution 2018-36 back to the next committee meeting, the Assembly Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee meeting, and then back to this Assembly at its next regular meeting. And Ms. Major seconded that motion. Mr. Quist, did you wish to speak to your
Yes,
motion?
thank you. So for all the reasons that the mayor gave, that the new administration would like to participate in the process in a more significant way than just this meeting. And then also, at our last meeting where we finalized this resolution to recommend here, there was an item that had been brought forward relatively late that we weren't sure what the future capital projects committee was, but we passed an ordinance, or not, excuse me, an ordinance, a recommendation to agenda on the next item for a state investment in a food security project in the interior. It would additionally give us opportunity to consider that more and potentially include that. So for that reason, I would also support postponement or referral. Thank you.
Thank you. I had hands from Mr. Lajewski and Mr. Tackey, probably on the main motion on the resolution, but if you wish to speak on motion to refer.
Mine's more to the refer.
Go ahead, Mr. Lajewski.
Kind of in response, I suppose, to the mayor's comments. Well, and this is scheduling. I guess I echoed some of this earlier, but it's looking to me like we may have a very busy meeting for our one meeting in December. So I'd like to take care of stuff now if we can. But very practically to the mayor, as far as assembly meetings go, as you know, the night is still young compared to many others. And so I think there's more than enough time for us to bat ideas across the room and amend, consider, and get you up to speed. And overall, I'm ready to push you into the deep end and see if you sink or swim. I think you're going to swim.
Mr. Tackey, did you wish to?
Yeah, I guess like a little bit more to the point. I mean, I have Mr. Lajewski's point to the mayor is, like, what kind of ideas did you have? Like, is there anything in particular? Because you sound like you did have ideas, but you like kept it vague and like, oh, I want to be in the committee meeting section to talk about it, not here. So, anything in particular?
Well, I guess to answer the question on postponement, we could go into more depth here on some of the ideas that I have. I want to be respectful of the folks that put time into drafting this document. I don't want to, that was one of the reasons why I didn't feel it was appropriate to bring a substitute today and just kind of say, thanks for all your work, but no thanks, and I've got my own ideas. So I wanted to really be involved in that process. If the Assembly wants to talk about this today, I'd be happy to do that. But as far as postponement or referring back to the committee, I think it allows for a greater ability to be able to work on the issues and talk about some strategic options that we may have, things that I've been able to use as tools working with our legislature. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Ms. Major.
Thank you so much. So I actually agree, and I support the bringing this up at a later date to let the committee take a look at it again. A couple of reasons. One, there is typically time, I think it's in February, for some of the legislative liaison members of the Assembly to talk these specific issues with each one of the legislators down in Juneau. So that does help us on the timeline a bit, and we're not completely dependent then on the mayor to carry that message for us, but there is also that opportunity. Two, I really would like to see us prioritize what we ask from the state in all of the areas and not just our capital projects, because I think it's really helpful if we can have that more robust conversation with them, and not just that, here's everything that we're interested in, but if you can only take on a few things, these are the things that are of greatest importance to us. I think it's always helpful and beneficial if we can offer solutions when we're bringing these types of things to the table, and not just sort of putting something in their lap. And then lastly, I intend to have a greater discussion at a later time and bring something up for some recommended changes to how the committee functions, to include perhaps operating more frequently so that we can really have this more robust discussion and really put some, have a greater or a more legitimate process to how we are bringing, developing these priorities and then bringing them forward for a vote and bringing them to the state. Thank you.
Ms. Major, I have next Ms. Sanford, then Ms. Williams, then Mr. Quist. So Ms. Sanford.
I was also hesitant to ask for more time just because I didn't want to be disrespectful of the work that has been done on this prior. But I think Mayor Board brings up a good point. His was strategy. Ms. Major brings up a good point, which is prioritizing. And I don't know if anybody watched the press conference with our governor-elect, but things are going to be very, very different in Juneau this year. And I think that having some time to take this list and think about how that's going to fit in with the way that the landscape in Juneau is going to be would be very helpful. So I'm in support of postponing it. Referring it, my goodness.
Thank you, Ms. Sanford. Ms. Williams?
On a practical note, if we are planning on doing any major reorganization of the words on the page of the resolution, I would rather that happened in a committee meeting and not here on the floor of the Assembly, so that we make sure that everything we want to say gets said correctly.
Thank you. Mr. Quist?
My points have been made. Thank you.
Thanks. Additional discussion or debate on the motion to refer Resolution 2018-36 back to the Assembly Capital Projects and Legislative Priorities Committee? I don't see any, so Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on the motion to refer back to the committee.
Mr. Quist?
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Ms. Like?
Yes.
Mr. Lojeski?
No.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Sanford?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes. Does anyone wish to change their vote? Seeing none,
8-1.
motion to refer carries 8-1. That will take us back to subsection B, reorganization of the Assembly. As noted earlier, we did not follow our code for voting. So, Madam Clerk, as I understand it, we need to have a runoff election first between Mr. Tackey and Mr. Gray. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we could pass out those ballots.
So the winner of the runoff will then enter a three-way race.
That is correct. We apparently, and Ms. Dolan can correct me if I'm wrong, but we eliminate from the lowest votes up.
Correct.
But one person at a time.
Right. If the two lowest tie, we do a runoff between the two of them.
Isn't there a rule about flipping a coin?
That's, no.
That needs to be
Not for this, no.
New
We
ordinance,
do
Matt.
decide by lot if it's a actual general election, like the voters, but not for your organization rules. We make you sit here until you elect someone.
'Cause I'm pretty sure I almost had to have a coin toss at one point when I was appointed.
Oh. That, yeah.
It was an appointment, yeah.
Oh, you're appointed.
Setting them here pretty soon. So I'll make an announcement at the end.
How many do they do?
I think you guys should just arm wrestle for it.
What?
Arm wrestle for it.
Arm wrestle for it.
Sanford appointed all of them.
I love them all. I love them all.
No, I mean depending.
Remember, our mics are still live, and we are on C. So
Well, they don't want dead time.
that's right. So they probably would appreciate it if it wasn't dead time.
Comedy hour.
Yeah, got good jokes.
We'll say for those of you listening, the clerks are tallying the votes for deputy presiding officer, so we will be back here shortly. Okay, so the three candidates are for our next round of voting will be Mr. Gray, Ms. Major, and Mr. Quist.
So,
Mr.
do we
Quist.
have an opportunity to comment now, or are we just voting? Or
I think we're just voting now. If the body wants another opportunity to comment, I'll allow it if everybody has an opportunity that's a candidate. Mr. Quist, do you want to comment?
I mean, with great reservation, I do, actually. Thank you for listening to me here. So, this is kind of a strange situation. I really don't, I think we should have as much unity as possible, and I really don't like saying negative things about anybody. So this makes it very difficult for me here. I mean, like, one of the reasons that I endorsed Mr. Cooper was because of unity. In the past, I've supported Ms. Major. I supported her candidacy for this office actively in a three-way race with like another credible candidate. But over the last months, I've been very concerned about my relationship with Ms. Major, and I've reached out to her and in no uncertain terms said that I had serious concern about our professional relationship. And the reason I'm saying this is because her comments, which I found very compelling, but since I've been thinking about how she's a bridge builder, don't ring true to me, because I've reached out to her and I've found no bridge building effort coming back at all. And there's only 9 of us here. So like, it's been very troubling to me because we should all be able to get along. And hopefully, if we do decide to, in any case, hopefully I'm the exception that proves the rule, and Ms. Major is indeed a really fantastic team player and bridge builder. But personally, that's not been my experience at all. Now, all of that being said, I lost this election, and the only reason we're here is because of a little technicality. So I would not encourage anybody here, even if you did vote for me previously, to vote for me. But I can't, in good conscience, currently, given the complete one way on this relationship, support Ms. Major. My experience with Mr. Gray has been entirely positive, and I have much more confidence in his ability to lead this body. And hopefully this. All of this being said, I really am not trying to be mean, and if this is just a misunderstanding, I'm hoping to hear that. But if I didn't feel strongly about this, I wouldn't have made all of you listen to it just now. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Quist, I went a little further astray of what I was anticipating, but I was given us an opportunity to speak again since we did have the error in the voting process. So I'll ask Ms. Major if she wants to make any comments, and then Mr. Gray. Ms. Major?
Sure, I will. Some of you may have noticed last Thursday, I felt at our last meeting, there was a very awkward conversation between Mr. Quist and I. Those conversations have happened on more than one occasion. I did not reach back out to Mr. Quist after he made a comment to me, but specifically because I addressed that elsewhere. I have on more than one occasion felt not treated well by Mr. Quist, and I chose to address that in different venues. So to say that I'm disappointed in his comments now would probably be an understatement. My professional record certainly speaks for itself. I've done some pretty phenomenal and amazing things. I don't choose to take things to a personal level, and so I'm actually disappointed that this is playing out now in this way, live in front of everyone. I am someone who, like I said, my record certainly proves for itself. I've done some pretty fantastic things in bridge building in a very professional manner that has served to accomplish a lot, both for what I've done at Fort Wainwright and what I've done working for nonprofit and other organizations. So again, I'm going to apologize that this played out in the open in front of everyone. And I know that I can do a fantastic job as DPO and do everything that's required for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Major. Mr. Gray, do you want to say anything?
I love everybody. I love everybody here. No, I have nothing further to say. I thank you for giving me a second chance here. I'd be more than honored to be your deputy presiding officer.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gray. And I'm going to leave it at just the candidates making statements and not open debate, and then we will go ahead and vote. So, at the risk of being a bit out of order or out of turn here, I am going to take this opportunity while clerks are counting the votes to say, I understand Mr. Quist has a strong feeling about this, but I think that we need to have a certain amount of decorum at our assembly meetings and addressing these. I understand you have strong feelings, Mr. Quist, but I guess, well, I'll leave it at that. I think we need to think carefully when we're making public comments about each other's qualifications and character. Mr. Quist,
yeah, if I may,
sure.
Just on the topic of topicality.
Yep.
So it wasn't lightly that I made those comments, and the reason that I feel that they're germane is because it's specific. Like, we're talking about the person, like a person who does a job about like interacting with us. I mean, it's about, all my comments were solely contained to the professional, and that was what I referred to in my comments. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the election, there was a majority for Ms. Major again. So Ms. Major is elected the Deputy Presiding Officer, and that takes us to the end of this agenda item. Under consideration of counter new business, ordinances be referred to committees or commissions. There are none. So we'll come back to citizens' comments, subsection B. Again, items not scheduled on the agenda. I'm going to open citizens' comments. I do not see anyone coming forward for citizens' comments, so I'm going to close citizens' comments. And that will take us to assembly member comments, and I will start with Mr. Tackey.
I have no comment this evening.
Mr. Lejeski?
I think every candidate we had for a leadership position, including Mr. Quist, was immensely qualified and was capable of serving effectively.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm glad that members of our press come here to our meetings, and I promise while I'm here I will not berate you or tell you you're fake news in any way.
Sanford?
Nothing today.
Ms. Williams?
I am looking forward to serving with all of you on the Assembly at the close of this first General Assembly meeting that I've served at. And I want to say that I really appreciate everyone who came out and voted in the municipal election and everyone who came out and voted on Tuesday's general election. Voting matters, as we know. We just voted tonight, and I appreciate everybody's participation.
Thank you. Mr. Quist?
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, I would just like to, once again, I mean, invite Ms. Major to, like, I'd like to bury the hatchet, and hopefully she does too. And I've actually been very concerned about this for a very long time and have not, anyways, I won't. So let's hopefully move forward and it'll be really good. Welcome to the new Assembly members. I'm very glad that you're all here. And I think that we're going to get a lot of good work done together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lake?
I just want to thank the administration, new mayor, and everyone else on the Assembly for the commitment that I've seen to do excellent work for our community.
Thank you. Mayor Ward, any final comments tonight?
I just look forward to working with the Assembly and the opportunities that you guys have given today for us to be able to go do some work and bring some items back to the Assembly and for us to be able to do the people's work. So thank you.
And Ms. Major, please, I'm sorry I jumped over you. Ms. Major, any comments, please?
Thank you for giving me a couple extra minutes. It's hard to see my hand raising from 3,000 miles away, and so thank you for not asking for a carrier pigeon to fly from Minnesota, because it certainly wouldn't have made it there in time, and it would have been really tired. No, I just thanks for letting me participate via telephone. It's great to be able to stay connected with what's going on, even when you're away and in the midst of other things. So I really appreciate it. I know we pushed two important topics for another time. I think the comments folks made, or everyone made earlier, about just really thinking through kind of how dynamics have changed is really sort of the right thing to do. And I think we've got people, both new school board members, new Assembly members, new people in leadership positions, new mayor, all of that, that I think will just help us as we continue to go forward and make some of these more important decisions. And I'll leave it at that. It's after midnight here, so I hung in better than I thought I would. But I just really appreciate the opportunity to be able to have been connected tonight for some of the important votes that we had. And so, yeah, I look forward to seeing everyone when I return.
Thank you, Ms. Major, and thank you for, I know, taking time to participate while you were away. Mr. Lejeski, I think, had a question for Mayor Ward.
Oh, no, it was just a quick, I forgot to comment. Okay. I forgot to thank everyone across the state who volunteered and survived running for public office. Whether they won or not, they still survived. And in particular, I wanted to thank and congratulate Governor-elect Mike Dunleavy.
Okay. Any additional comments from any Assembly member? I will give us the Assembly schedule for the week of November 11th. The AML conference in Anchorage is November 12th through 16. 3 Assembly members will be attending newly elected officials training, and 3 Assembly members will be attending the conference. For November's holiday schedule, the Borough Administrative Center will be closed Monday, November 12th for Veterans Day, and November 22nd and 23rd for Thanksgiving. The Thursday, December 6th, Finance Committee at 5:30 with the Committee of the Whole immediately following, and then Thursday, December 13th will be our last regular Assembly meeting of the year here in the Assembly chambers at 6 p.m. So before we adjourn, I'll just note that if any Assembly members have committees that they're interested in serving on, please email that information to me so that I can work on getting committee assignments set, and also if there are any specific requests for seating or things like that, please let me know. And I will try to get that resolved here in the next couple of days. And I thank you for your vote of confidence in selecting me as presiding officer, and I'll do my best to do a good job with all of your help, I'm sure. And I think we'll get the carrier pigeon ordinance up next. So, with that, we're adjourned.